I'm fuming that this was allowed to happen to you. A grown man and other grown men and people around you allowed this to happen to you. It's absolutely disgraceful. You were very badly sexually abused by your dad.
Yeah.
And you were raped, in fact, by your dad, and you ended up getting pregnant by him, and you ended up having that child. Not one person has stepped in, not one person is intervening, one person is keeping you safe. This is absolutely one of the worst stories that I've heard. Already by the age of 10 or 11, your life is hell. It's a living hell. I mean, Stacey, it's a miracle that you're able to even talk about this publicly. This is not a normal human being. What a scumbag. What a scumbag. Really? You want to protect yourself while you go around battering children and women and little girls at that? Like, what a pathetic, tiny little man he really is. Justice hasn't been done. He did 3.5 years in prison. That's not fucking justice for you. And by the way, the other people that are walking around that have let you down as well, you haven't had justice. You've created justice for yourself and for your daughter. You have done this. You created this life for yourself, you on your own, because you're a fucking miracle. And I'm so proud of who you were then and who you are now. Like you are a brave, beautiful, shining light in this world. How you survived that, I will never know. I will never know. Hi, and welcome to The New Mind. Now, before we go into today's episode, I just want to ask you a big favour. Please subscribe, because it really supports the channel to grow, and it allows me to continue to get amazing guests and to share these incredible life stories with you. The truth is, I learn something from every single guest, and I know you will too. So hit that subscribe button and make me very, very happy. Thank you so much for supporting me. I appreciate you all. Now enjoy the episode. Welcome to The New Mind, everybody. Today's guest is Stace Don. Now, many of you may have seen her already on James English's podcast, and today's story is extremely sensitive. I'm just going to put a trigger warning at the beginning, but I really want you to listen to Stace's story. Fundamentally, it's one of courage, resilience, and overcoming the worst possible thing that most of us can ever imagine. But also, she's written an amazing book, which I'm going to reference throughout the podcast, mainly because I really want you to get behind her and buy the book, support her and support what she's trying to do, which is to be raw, honest, and to tell the truth about what's a really, really hard subject. The book is called My Girl. Welcome, Stacey. How are you?
I'm not too bad. Thank you for having me.
No, you're welcome. I'm fully aware that this is a really very difficult subject. You and I both know that we share a similar storyline, and that kind of I saw you crop up on James's, and then the beautiful Samantha Brown introduced us. I know you were talking to Samantha quite a lot, and she's been on the podcast as well. And she just said, look, you know, basically, I've got a great guest for you, someone that's got a really important story. And here we are today. So I want to thank Sam. But most of all, I really want to thank you, because what you're doing is phenomenal, considering what you've gone through. And unfortunately, we hear stories like this more and more. But I think the voices like yours that are being so strong and spreading the very important information about, you know, what we can look out for and what we can do, I think is just invaluable. So thank you so much for being here. Now, with what anyone that's already seen you on social media knows, it's essentially that you were very badly sexually abused by your dad.
Yeah.
And you were raped, in fact, by your dad, and you ended up getting pregnant by him, and you ended up having that child. And the story surrounds what happens before and after. So again, it's very, very complex, and it's very, very interwoven with lots of different events and lots of different people. But where shall we start? I mean, I suppose we have to go all the way back to the beginning. And I know this is extremely traumatic for the listeners, and even more so for you. So I just want to be really sensitive to that with you, Stacey. So again, pause at any time.
Yeah.
So let's go back to the sort of first memory or awareness you have that life is a bit different for you.
It was when I was 7. So when I was 7 years old, I lived with my foster parents, but I didn't know them as that. I thought I was with my mum and dad, my brothers, my sisters, and I had a routine, structured life. Like everything was just what you'd see or want for children. Um, I went to school, but my foster mum, she worked at the school, so I'd be at the school in the morning before everyone. I'd be at the school till after everyone left. We'd go to church on Sundays, every Sunday, that was routine. Every Saturday we'd walk to the town centre and walk back home. So like life was literally like so structured, like so routine. And then I was never allowed to sleep out, I remember that. And I was never allowed off the street. But obviously I just thought my parents was overprotected. They was a lot older than some of my other friends' mums and dads. And although I had social services coming round, I didn't really see it as so it was social services coming round because I thought I must have had them all the way growing up. So that was kind of the norm for me. So I never like had to question, oh, why are they coming round and stuff. And then it started. All my mates was playing out, and I went to the park at the back of the house. I weren't meant to. But I went to the park at the back of the house, and I was just there playing, and a man tapped me on the shoulder, and I looked round, but I'd been warned about stranger danger, and I'd actually just watched something with my foster sister about a man taking children, into fields from when they were riding on the bikes. I just watched that, and when this man tapped me on the shoulder, I just looked up at him, and he had spiky hair, and he's like, "Do you know who I am?" And I was just trying to not speak, and he went, "I'm your dad," and I was just like. I was so confused. I would just remember thinking in my head, this man's going to try and take me. So I just went out of the park, run back home, run through the house. And I told my foster parents what had happened. And next minute, they just started shutting the doors, shutting the windows, locking everything up. And it was just like a deafening silence at first, and found it confusing. I just couldn't understand. And then I thought I was going to get in trouble, obviously, for going off the street. So I just go and hide in my wardrobe. I used to hide in my wardrobe all the time as a kid. And then the next couple of days, couple of weeks, the atmosphere in the house had completely changed. Completely changed.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, so this is because your foster parents are now aware that your dad has tried to be in contact, you think?
Yeah, and they knew that they'd brought me up, that they was my mum and dad. So obviously this man approaching me, they was obviously aware of the dangers that he posed as well, but
Yeah.
at 7 years old, I wasn't aware of that. And then when social services did come out to me and told me that they are my foster parents, I struggled to understand because when I saw all my friends on the street and stuff, their lives didn't change,
Yeah.
And I felt like everything had just been ripped from underneath me. Life had changed at home because everything was just silent. You walk into a room, you could just feel the atmosphere. Obviously, at 7 years old, I couldn't really understand why, So yeah, I felt like I'd been lied to. I just didn't understand who I was anymore.
No.
And I started trying to go and meet this man regular, not because I wanted to, but it was kind of rebelling behaviour because he was the one that told me the truth, Social services told me that he was who he was, so he told me the truth. So it made me as naively go what is it? It's curiosity in it as a child.
Of course, because you're 7 at this age, right? What's really important to say here, and people that listen to this podcast regularly will already have heard me say this so many times, is that between the ages of 0 and 7, the prefrontal cortex isn't even fusing. So what that means is there's no filter. So everything that goes in that foundation developmental period is going in with no filter. So it's landing in your brain. That's your reality. You haven't even got a sense of that there's a potential there could be another reality at that age. Everything is just as it seems. Think about even the basic stuff like Father Christmas, or believing in fairies, or believing that there's a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. We believe everything we're told at that age because we have no ability to analyze and to be able to go, actually, that doesn't seem right. We just believe everything, which leaves us both beautiful and carefree, but also at risk of danger, because we're so malleable, so pliable, we believe everything. And the reason I say that is because that lays what I always say, like the first layer of magnets, because obviously everything we experience is what we're drawn to later on because of familiarity. Yeah. So that first layer of magnets that's laid down in our developmental years is so fundamental to what happens next. And already we can see that during those first 7 years, life's, by 7, you find out life is a lie. But the one person that's telling you the truth is this person that you're not really supposed to be seeing. And that's confusing in itself. So of course you're going to look around and realize that you're different, and realize that other people have got a different life to you. That on its own, feeling different to everybody else, is a real, I would say, developmental trauma, because now I'm not the same. Now I don't fit in. That's already enough for a child to have some, maladaptions as they get older. So to move back to what you were saying, you start going to see, through curiosity, of course, you start going to meet this man that's your dad and build a relationship with him.
Yeah, I just kept going down because he used to take one of my siblings to the park, and obviously then, I thought that's my real siblings, it's not like the siblings what I thought was real that aren't. And my whole behaviour just started to change. I just really didn't understand myself anymore, because at school, I'd always wanted to do things for the teachers. I was involved in every club going, so I did cross country, I did chess, I did violin, I did football, I did netball. I was into absolutely everything, and I was thriving, and I always had something to do. I was never a kid that was bored. And then all of a sudden, it was just like I weren't bothered. Before I wanted to make everyone proud of me, but now when people are proud of me, what is that going to get taken away as well? It just sat in my head. And then it was coming up to, so I started having contact with my real mum. So that was once a fortnight. It started with just after schools, and then it went to once at a weekend and stuff, and then once I would start staying over at a weekend. But my mum was with a partner, and it was very nice to start so I've gone through everything being perfect, and then I'd go start having visits with the man, and then it went to supervised access visits at social services. And then I started going seeing my mum all of a sudden. So my whole routine and dynamic had changed, and then when I would go and see my mum, it was because they knew my foster brothers. It was like I was a pawn in a game of chess. No one actually wanted me, but they wanted me to hurt the other people.
Wow.
And he started saying to me, you should live with your mum. You don't want to live with them. You don't want to live with your foster parents. And all the kids live with their mum. They're just trying to stop you from living with your mum because they want to work your mum and stuff. But I was only 8 or 9 when this was happening, so it was hard for me to digest. And then I actually started thinking, well, they've lied to me. Maybe all kids do live with them, or maybe there's some truth in this,
So your brain is like plasticine at this age. And like I said, you don't have, because you're developing at that point, your brain isn't able to do logic and analysis and organization and planning and long-term thinking and all of those things that we rely on as adults to make good decisions. You're being manipulated, like you say. And already it's so awful that this was happening to, because you're a baby at that age.
Yeah.
You're a baby, if any of us at any time of the day walk past an 8 or a 9-year-old child, as an adult, we can see they're a baby. They may not be a baby, but you still think, oh, they're tiny. And that all kids want to do is play and learn and explore. But at this point, you're, like you say, you're a pawn in a game, and you're being pulled and pushed and lied to. And I guess sometimes people and adults lie for the right reasons, and sometimes they don't. And at that age, you can't work that out. All you know is that nothing is true, and you don't know what to believe anymore. And so your head's scrambled, isn't it?
Yeah.
And like you say, you're losing, not only are you losing this truth of who your family are, you're losing your siblings, and you're getting new siblings, and you're meeting new people, and you're here, there and everywhere. It sounds like literally sort of posted around to different people for different reasons.
Yeah.
I mean, at that age, did you look around at other kids and go, this doesn't seem to be what other people are experiencing?
Yeah, I felt not like jealous, where I didn't want them to have what they had, just like jealous, like why does my life have to change? I wanted to go back to what it was, just enjoying all the after school clubs that I was doing, not walking into a room that's full of silence.
Yeah, because you've lost all your fun. You've lost all that all those things that are very normal and should be very much about, learning to build your skill sets and your resilience, and you learning to build your friendships. Well, that's all been completely destroyed.
Yeah.
So this situation where you're now being, well, pretty much manipulated into believing that the foster family are bad and they don't really want you. What happens after that?
So when I was 10, so I was in year 6, 10 or 11, the courts granted me to go back and live with my mum. So as a temporary, like they said, it was temporary. It was never temporary. But I went and moved back with my mum, and my mum's partner, he didn't like my foster parents, as I've mentioned, and he said it's all right because once you finish school in the summer, that'll be the last time you ever see them. So I knew that was coming. So to have someone there all them years, calling them mum and dad, having a structured life, all my happiness, all my safety, and then to be took away from her and only seeing them every now and then. I'd see them at the school when my foster mum, she used to bring me packed lunches in, because my mum's partner, he always gave me foods in my packed lunch that I didn't like, and I had a severe eating disorder. And he weren't very nice to me, so he'd cover my eyes with like my school tie or blindfold him with something, and he'd have his mates there, and they'd all stand there laughing at me, and they'd just push me. But as they push me, they'd trip me up. Obviously, I'm falling because I can't see what's what. And he had like proper goofy teeth when I was a kid. So they used to be like, Bugs Bunny's fell over, you've got golf stick legs and stuff like that. So I was going through that when I just moved, and then every time I went to the school and I saw my foster mum, I wanted to tell her all these things, but nothing would come out of my mouth.
I mean, first of all, I am devastated that any child goes through that. That's just cruelty to the highest level. For grown adults to be picking on a little girl, I mean, we're talking about people that you can't even describe as human. That is absolutely disgusting behaviour, and I'm just so sorry that you went through that. That's awful. It's bad enough when you're bullied at school, and trust me, you know, people that have been bullied at school, I'm sure you have, I was.
Yeah.
It's hell on earth. But when it's adults, the child has no way of ever feeling safe ever again. How do you trust? Even like, we haven't even got into the main body of the story yet, and you have literally got no safe space at this point.
No.
I mean, I understand that you foster parents, you found out that they lied to you, but it sounds like what they provided in those first years were very, you know, safe, structured environment.
Yeah.
So although they didn't tell you the truth, which again is a betrayal, they did provide you with safety, but now that's all gone. And you've gone into what I would imagine is like a freeze state where your voice has become completely suppressed because you're scared.
Yeah, I couldn't, literally, as much as I wanted to tell her and just go in the school and say this is happening at home, because I also knew that it was coming up to the summer and I won't be able to go there anymore. And obviously I didn't want that to happen. I didn't want it to stop. I just wanted social service to say, right, yeah, go back home. You know, that's always my home. Even now at 36, that's my home. And
Yeah.
they just didn't.
So first of all, I mean, I know 100% from my own story, which we won't talk about now, but just in terms of the fact my dad went to prison, and then when he came out of prison, he was allowed to come back into the home. Nobody was safeguarding. Nobody was caring. You know, my mum brought him back in, end of story. That was it. There was not one person that went, hang on a minute, this doesn't seem like a good idea to me. You know, no one was doing that back then. And I'm 47. So it's not the same time frame, but it's a similar time zone.
Yeah.
The problem I have is what you've just said to me, I still think is happening largely today, that whether it's because social services are so stretched, there's just not enough resources, there's not enough staff, there's not enough processes that are in place that protect the child. You were put in this temporary situation with your mum, but nobody really was looking at what was seriously going on in the house, which is that you were being bullied and abused by her partner and his friends. And obviously you want to go back to this foster home where that's where you feel safe, but no one's looking at that by the sounds of it. You're just left in a state of freeze and shut down without being able to say how you really feel.
Yeah, no, even when social services come round, I died under the table because they'd start asking me questions in front of my mum and the partner, and obviously I weren't going to speak when he was there because he'd tell me stories about he'd hit kids and put them in hospital, he'd say horrible things, and obviously the way that him and his friends used to laugh at me, he used to whip me with the belt, he used to hit me with his hand, but he'd stand me like at a certain angle in front of the living room window, so anyone walking past would have just seen me stand there, and he'd have you at a certain angle to proper be able to give you a proper smack, you know. But it was like they could tell. So like I look back on pictures of myself, and social services would have definitely been able to tell that there was something wrong. My whole behaviour changed. I withdrew on at school because everyone knew me as my foster parents' daughter. And then everyone would have known that I weren't living with her anymore because I weren't the first one in school. I weren't the last one when I was leaving, when they was leaving, you know. So my friends would have known that things had changed. I was embarrassed. So I stopped. I withdrew myself at school as well. So I started being naughty for the teachers, which that would have never been a thing, you know. I ended up having to go to the doctors because I weren't eating. It wasn't because I didn't want to eat, it was because obviously my mum's partner was purposely giving me food that I didn't like and would make me sit looking at cold food for hours and hours and hours and then be like, right, go and get in bed. Like, so obviously I lost loads of weight, and the doctor even said, like, if this continues, you're going to end up in hospital with tubes, but he'd take me home and laugh at that, even though, like, he was making that happen.
I mean, you've been so badly failed. So by every angle, every system that was supposed to protect you, be it the home system, the social services, the school, and even the GPs. Why wasn't this flagged up? I mean, you were in a dangerous state. If you're close to hospitalisation and like you say, you're hiding under the table, you're not speaking, you're skinny because you're not eating, you're malnourished, you're at the point where the GP saying if this carries on, you're going to be hospitalised. Why is nobody stepping in to take you out of that environment? I mean, there are some almost, it's criminal what's happened. Criminal. It's awful.
I don't
I mean,
understand. Like, I don't get it how social services or even teachers, they didn't pick up on it because
that's what I mean.
my behaviour was like I was literally I'd do anything for anyone, and then all of a sudden like I just started rebelling and started being a little bit naughty, what they call the problem child.
Was there anyone that was outside of the home that was kind or asking questions, or did everybody just ignore it?
No, my mum had a couple of friends that was really nice that only come round every now and then. Like they was lovely with me, but it was very few and far apart that they'd come, because of the other
Yeah.
people that used to go to my mum's house and they didn't like them, so they wouldn't really go around that often. But yeah, that was it.
Wow. And this is all whilst you're 10 or 11 years old.
Yeah, all that happened when I was like 10, 11, and then the summer came, and I remember going down to my foster parents' house, and I knew it was going to be the last time I was allowed to see them. So, like, all my friends was knocking on, and they was all talking about camping on the grass at the side of my house where I used to live, and all like taking loads of snacks there and having a laugh and this, that, and the other. And I really wanted to do it, but I didn't want to. I didn't want to. I didn't want to go out and play with my friends because I was trying to build up the thing to tell my foster parents that I'm not going to be able to see him again, and I just couldn't. I just couldn't do it.
So what happened with that? Because obviously this is where, this is the people that you love that love you. How did it come about that, because I guess you were forced not to be able to see them again at some point.
Yeah, after that day I weren't allowed. They come to pick me up, but my mum had just lost a baby. He died stillborn. And my mum's partner went out and started threatening my foster dad and that, and I was grounded in my bedroom, so I weren't even like, I had to just watch it through my bedroom window.
Oh my God.
That was it.
And how old, if you don't mind me asking, or you might not even know this, how old was your mum's partner at this point?
My mum's partner, so like 30, early 30s, I think.
So this is and I only asked this question because I think I want to paint the full picture. We've got a man in his 30s that is not your biological father. He is the partner of your mother, who is basically an abusive, controlling, coercive, dangerous individual who is threatening your foster parents, who is clearly starving you and bullying you and abusing you. And you're having to withdraw from life. You're going into complete, I guess, playing dead ultimately to survive the environment. And not one person has stepped in, not one person is intervening, one person is keeping you safe.
No.
I mean, this is absolutely one of the worst stories that I've heard, because it's the level of fear that you're living with. It's the level of self-abandonment. It's the level of, and trust me, I mean, I never ever compare trauma because everybody's trauma is relevant and metabolized by them according to many different factors. But I don't think anyone could listen to this and think anything other than this. Already by the age of 10 or 11, your life is hell. It's a living hell. I mean, Stacey, it's a miracle that you're able to even talk about this publicly. And I know it's hard. I can see it's hard, and anyone watching or listening will be able to hear that. But again, I think we need to hear these stories, mainly because you break cycles. Ultimately, you take your power back. And I'm saying that now. I mean, as I said at the very beginning, you wrote a book.
Yeah.
Using your voice is the most important thing for yourself, for the little girl that you were, and for all the little girls that are going through, and boys that are going through something like this right now. Using your voice is the most amazing, powerful thing you can do. And ultimately, that little girl who couldn't even say at the school gates to your foster mother, this is what's happening, you're now fighting back with full force using that voice. And it is a miracle. It is a miracle that you're able to do that. And again, just for the listeners, I'm sure they'll all be the same. Like, thank you so much for putting yourself through this timeline again to to share with us what actually has gone on for you and for millions of others, undoubtedly and sadly. So, cutting back into the story, your foster father is threatened and you're watching this from the window. If you can, and I know this will be exceptionally difficult, I don't want to make you do anything you don't want to do. That little girl watching from the window, what's happening in her body? What's happening in your mind? Can you remember?
I was just so upset and so confused. I just didn't know why it would benefit my mum's partner to stop me from seeing him in a way. Like, I just didn't understand why I didn't deserve that anymore. I did feel abandoned, helpless. Like, I didn't want my foster dad getting threatened. I didn't want anything bad to happen to him. And yeah, it was confused, like really, really confusing for me.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's confusing as an adult listening to it. You know, as I listen on, I do get a little bit emotional when I listen to these stories. I try not to, but it's hard not to because it's real and it's someone's life, and I can't help but see the little girl in you actually as you tell the story, because obviously as we revisit parts of our timelines and we tell stories like this, you're back there.
Yeah,
you know, and I think, yeah, you are, because I can see that's happening, and I'm there with you, like in that bedroom, sort of standing behind you, watching you, if you like. I'm a very visual person, so when someone shares their story, I'm almost standing with you in that room, and I can almost feel it. Again, because I've got a similar story, I understand some of the confusion. It's not exactly the same. Obviously, there's a lot more complications with your story and a lot more layers. So it's a lot for you to go through this. And you were abandoned. You know, you were abandoned and you were let down, and, you know, no one deserves that. No one, especially not a child. No one deserves to be treated that way. I mean, he was clearly a sociopath, a narcissist, potentially even a psychopath. I mean, this is a dangerous person, and someone who is literally ruining someone's life. He's literally ruined your life at this point.
Yeah.
And I guess it's really important to say this. So I always like to give you a break for a minute, number one, but also explain a couple of things to the listeners about if they've gone through similar things or if they know someone that has. I always talk to my clients in clinic about this, just to give you context to what's actually happening to the body at this age. So we've spoken about the prefrontal cortex and how it's not fully developed, but also as you're starting to get repeated experiences in life, and I mentioned the magnets earlier, those magnets will sort of, if you like, govern your thought processes. So in the brain, there's billions of neurons. And in order to have a thought, the neurons need to join together, and they join together through a synaptic pulse, which is like an electrical pulse. What happens then is there's a cascade of chemicals in response to the thought. Now, with repetition, and we know neuroplasticity wires the brain, but with repetition of the same thoughts or the same experiences over and over again, you get the same cascade of chemicals. Those chemicals, be it fear, scared, sad, whatever the negative emotion is, it starts to create like a cellular software. The cellular software starts to operate the mind, and now you're 95% unconscious brain body, right? So this fear, this sadness, this confusion, it's starting to operate the mind. And when that's operating the mind, it creates the identity, the behavior, and the frequency that individual emits into the world. Now, that means, going back to what you were saying about how you changed at school and how you were withdrawing and how your voice was shutting down, your body is learning this. Your body is mapping this. Your body, if it doesn't know it's doing it, it doesn't know why, it sort of remains stuck in that state. Literally, the body remains stuck. And so what happens is, as you go into your early teens, your body is now braced for fear, for sadness, for abandonment, for neglect, and even your fascia, which is like a spider's web that holds your entire body together. That's contracting, tightening up. Your vocal cords have shut down and tightened up. You're probably carrying a lot of cellular software of fear and sadness in the chest and in the solar plexus. You're overwhelmed and confused. That's before you've even gone into teens. So the girl that becomes the teenager is going into the teenage years with that cellular software and identity in place now. So then tell me what happens with all that in mind. Tell me what happens next.
So then the next like couple, so what it was, my mum's partner was actually friends with the man from the park. I don't really call him my dad, I call him the man from the park. So
fair enough.
We moved house round the corner. We moved house when my mum lost the baby. But he started coming. He just come to that house. Before we moved, he'd come to that house just every now and then, and he got with a girl from down the street, so he ended up like coming to my mum's house often. And then I did see him for a bit. My mum lost the baby, and then we moved, and I didn't hear anything. And one of my friends from primary school, like, obviously I distanced myself, but we was in like PE together in the secondary school, and she come up to me and she went, "Oh, your foster sister, I seen her yesterday." I was like, "Oh, what did you?" Like, obviously, like, I wanted to see her. I said, can you ask her to come and meet me?" She went, yeah, we'll do it. Anyway, next time in PE, a couple of days later, she went, "Oh, I've seen her again." She said she'll meet in the bus station before school. So I was like, right, will. So I went to the bus station before school, and I seen my foster sister there, so I was happy. But my mum's partner, it just hit me with a belt, but I turned, so I had a big bruise on my thigh, on my left thigh. And when I saw her, I told her about the bruise because I just wanted to get back home. It was just that like glimmer of hope, And she went, "Go and tell the teachers at the school when you get in." So I said, "Right, I will do." So I went in and told the teachers at the school. They kept me out of like class in the reception area all day and that. And then I went home, and then a couple of days later, I was still outside the reception area, and I got given a note off the receptionist, and on the note it said, "Your dad's going to pick you up from school." I swear, in my head, as soon as I read that, it resonated with my foster dad. I was like, "Oh my God, I'm going to be able to see him again. I'm going to be able to see him again." And then after a couple of seconds, like literally, I went on a proper high. And then after a couple of seconds, it kind of just like, nah, they've got it wrong, man. It's my mum's partner. They've just got it mixed up with my dad. So I'm just sat there like, anyway, I walked out to the pub where it said to meet him on the note. I'm walking over the road. I see this car. The man from the park got out of the car. So my mum's partner sent him to pick me up from school to threaten me to not go and see my foster sister anymore in the bus station.
Oh my God!
And when I got in the car, he went, "You won't be seeing that foster family again." I said, "But I want to." He went, "I'm telling you now, you're not going to be seeing them again. Otherwise, something's going to happen to him." Obviously, then that
so
me.
He's threatening them.
Yeah,
he's not threatening you. He's threatening that they'll hurt them.
Yeah, it was just mind game.
God's sake.
Obviously, then after that, I didn't go, and then the man from the park's dad, so it was like my granddad, like, because I had to start going to the man's house, and he had a girlfriend, and his girlfriend was lovely. His girlfriend was like really, really, really nice with me. She actually like gave me time of day, so it gave me a bit of a glimpse of what I used to have in my foster home. So I like really like wanted to be around her all the time, and my granddad, he said that he wanted me to go to America with him. So the Christmas, what year was it? I was 13, so 2002, I think. Christmas 2002, I ended up going to America with him for 2 weeks, but my mum had to write a letter to the social services to say I'll be staying with my nana and granddad, but I never stayed with my nana and granddad.
So again, they're lying to the social services, and again, that's just a massive red flag.
Yeah, and it was nice, like, when we was around my nan and granddad, but when we wasn't, like, when we woke up in the morning, because it'd be him and his girlfriend in one bed, and then me and my sibling in the other bed in a hotel room, and he pushed me down the side of the bed, but pushed the bed closer, so I felt like I was literally squished against the wall, And then other times he'd just pick me up and drop me in the pool outside the complex thing. But I can't swim. Like, I've never been able to swim, so I'm scared of water. So it was just little things like that, like he'd have authority. And then I'd start going to the where we went and got like dinner, breakfast and dinner, you know, like the all you can eat thing, like inclusive thing or whatnot.
Yeah, the
So
buffet.
So I would go in there and I'd start biting chunks out of my hand because I just didn't know what to do. And then I'd get shouted at for that as well, you know. And then when we got back from America, my mum's partner turned around and went, "It's all right, because I'm going to send you to go and live with the man, because I know he'll give you what for." And at 13, I was 13, and because I turned 14 while I lived there, so when I was 13, I ended up having to move in with him.
So after all of that abuse and after all of that horrific abuse, you're now sent to who you now refer to as the man in the park.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many layers of instability, abuse, neglect, and it is horrific. It's horrific what happened to you as a little girl. It's beyond horrific. And, you know, normally I'll come in with useful, I guess, therapeutic tips but what can you even say at this point? It's clear that you're never going to develop in a healthy, adaptive way, that your life is shaped around horror. And that's why I mentioned the electrical pulses, the chemical cascade and the cellular software, how that affects identity. I do believe, though, Stace, and I've got to say this so clearly, I do believe that you are changing that now. I do believe by using your voice, I can already see that you know there's value to who you are. You may not have been treated with any care, love or protection since you were taken out of that foster home, but you are turning that around. I can see it in you, and that's what's going to give so many people hope. I mean, look, you're turning it around, you're breaking cycles, you're using your voice. So before we go on to the next bit, I've got to commend you for that. Like, so many people don't make it. They don't make it, and here you are doing something incredible and so powerful for so many people. So you're sent now to live with the man from the park.
Yeah. So I lived there. I lived there for like 9 months. And I was quite protected there. So I'd seen like hit my siblings and stuff. I wasn't allowed to go to school. I was took out of school. I had to go to army cadets. And that was the only place I was really allowed to go. I had to clean the house, do the washing, the ironing, like take my siblings to school, whatnot. But I got some friends on the street, and I've stayed at her house, and then a mum asked if I could stay there again. I had toothache, and then I went. He said yeah to my friend's mum about staying there, so she come back and said, yeah, but something just didn't sit right with me. But I stayed there anyway, because obviously I weren't in the house, because I didn't like seeing like my sibling get hurt and stuff. But obviously his partner protected me. Yeah. And then I went back in the morning to go and take my sibling to school. And he went, what you doing? He said, I'm doing that. So I was like, okay. And he went, so his partner had to go to the hospital, like she was quite poorly. And he went, it's all right, I'm going to be a cunt with you when she's gone. So I was like, so I thought, what the heck? So obviously then I'm just like, right, just get up, just do cleaning, you know. So I started washing up and things, and he come in the kitchen. And so I stepped away from the sink and I've just looked at him, and he went, why should you get a slap? And I went to say, I don't know, but I only got to I don't, and he slapped me on the side of my face. So I was just like, and you always get told, I always watched him tell my siblings, if you cry, you get it again. If you don't cry, don't get it again. So I knew then not to cry, you know. So I'm just like, right, okay. And then I finished washing up, and then I went and sat down, and I thought that was it. And do you remember the old green ashtrays, like the really thick glass ashtrays, what they used to have? He just smashed it off my kneecap. So I was like, don't cry. And then he went, you've got washing upstairs in your room, go and get it. But even though like my head was messy, like I like to like to have all my stuff in a certain place. I'd just been like that since foster home, do you know? So I knew that my bedroom was tidy. So I'll come back downstairs. I said, I ain't got no washing. And then he went, get upstairs. But as I've gone back upstairs, he's literally behind me. And he pulled my pyjamas out from under my pillow. But I got told I could wear them 1 or 2 nights, and I only wore them one night, so I didn't understand. And he just launched them at me like that. He went take them down, so I took them down. And as I walked downstairs and he come through the front room, you've got a door here and then the kitchen. And I literally got to the side of the door and he just pinned me against the wall. He started punching me in my stomach and that.
Oh my God. I mean, this is unbelievably painful to listen to and to tell the story. And I'm saying this because the level of violence, the level of psychopathy here is off the Richter scale. This is not a normal human being. And quite frankly, I'm fucking fuming. I am fuming listening to this, that this was allowed to happen to you. I'm sorry for everyone listening if that seems a bit dark, me going there. I'm fucking fuming that a grown man and other grown men and people around you allowed this to happen to you. It's absolutely disgraceful. There's no other words. I mean, I've definitely heard some horrific stories doing this podcast and doing the job that I do. I mean, I've worked with trauma for a very, very long time, and there are some stories, and yours is one of them, that make me realise that there is a darkness in this world, and you are definitely the light, by the way. But we have to know the level of darkness that's in people, because there are moments when you realise that some people will never ever be able to be healed or fixed or rehabilitated. These people are those people. They are monsters, and there are people that just cannot be rehabilitated. They're monsters, and we mustn't hear your story and think this is a one-off. Like I said at the beginning, unfortunately, there are thousands, millions of children living in this world that are going through absolutely horrific, monstrous lives. And I am so angry that you've been so badly let down. I'm sure everybody in this podcast now wants to wrap their arms around you and protect you and love you and support you in any way that they can, because it's just the worst. It's the worst. How you survived that, I will never know. I will never know. But you did, which tells me something very, very magical about you. So this day, I guess this is the first time, although you've seen how your biological father, because that's who he is, I know he's the man from the park, but just to remind people, I know you've seen him behave in these horrific ways before, but this is like the first time you're really experiencing this level of violence directly from him.
Yeah.
From the outside, I suppose this is a really important part before we carry on. What would people have seen? I know we spoke about the ages at sort of 9, 10, 11, that you had withdrawn and you weren't taking part in the things that you loved, and you were being a bit naughty at school. Although you weren't being naughty, you were just, adapting. You were obviously shutting down, and then by this point you were taken out of school completely. So you're at Army Cadets, but what would have, say, neighbours or whatever known? What signs, just for the people that are listening, again, because we've got to protect children, what do you think they would have seen from the, I mean, obviously no one was bloody doing anything about it, but if they was seeing anything from the outside, what would they have seen, do you think? What would have been the warning signs?
It's an hard one, especially where I live, because there was all congregated with each other. So the next door neighbours where we lived there, him and his girlfriend, they used to watch their kids while the adults was at work. And then on the other side, the woman was at work all the time. Do you know?
Right.
But some of the friends that come around would have known that I work going in school and stuff, but it was kind of normalised. I shouldn't have been in school, but I should have been in school, do you know?
Yeah. Yes. So again, the whole community was really colluding. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. It was just normalised, and like no one come in and said, "Oh, why are you not in school today?" Like they just knew I was going to be off, and that was it. No questions asked. School didn't even come out and do safety checks, which is confusing now. Like I'll go more into this in my story, but he's actually got a charge sheet, which is in public knowledge, which I only found out when doing my book, of having sexual activity with a minor back when I was born. And there were no checks done. Social services would have had access to that as well.
So again, it goes back to what I was saying about my dad being convicted for what he did to me for sexual abuse, and then literally walking back into the home.
Yeah.
Like no questions asked, just literally. And so the social services, the police, the prison, everyone knew what he'd done. And it still blows my mind. I mean, obviously when you're a child, you don't know that's not normal. No. It's only when you become an adult, and like you say, you look at you writing your book, and I've written a book as well. So as you write a book, you find out more, don't you? But you suddenly go, hang on, what the hell? He'd already been charged. There was already information about him out there. You're not at school anymore. Yeah. Social services, the school, no one is going, hang on a minute, this guy's got a history. We should probably check up on her. Not one person.
Not one person even come out and thought, oh, she's not been in school for 6 months. Like, there were nothing. Not one thing.
I mean, there are some very accountable. There's some very... Look, I know the systems have been broken for a long time. I don't doubt that. And it's even worse now. But there's some very, 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 very accountable adults here in all of those. I mean, they need to be held up and named and shamed. Like, how dare you ignore what was going on? These aren't just like you didn't come in, a couple of days a week. You weren't in school at all.
Oh.
And he was a known child sex offender.
Yeah.
This is not... It's absolutely baffling and confusing even now. I don't understand what went wrong, Stace, but it certainly is horrific. Okay. And I don't know why I'm still surprised by such level of darkness. When you've heard it a few times, you should just be kind of like, right, we understand this goes on in the world. But when you hear a human being telling a very human story, it's very hard not to be disgusted and shocked. I'm still shocked. It doesn't matter how many times I hear these stories, and having had a similar story myself, it just doesn't stop being shocking. So there's this horrific violent explosion in the house towards you. I mean, God knows how you were able to walk after having an ashtray thrown at your knee like that, but then he's punching you in the stomach in the hallway between the kitchen and the door. What happens next?
So it just been my sibling's birthday, and all the toys from the birthday was out in the middle of the floor. And he went, right, I'm going out. My friend had just knocked on, so he let my friend in, and that he started laughing because my friend asked why I was crying, and that he just started laughing and whatnot. And then he went, right, I'm going out. I want everything tidied up by the time you get back, and nothing's out of place. I just looked at all these toys, like literally, like this is what happened. I literally looked at all these toys, and I just thought, I can't be hit with every single one of them. Like, that is swinging. So before, when he went upstairs, when my friend was in the house, I threw my friend my phone and she hid it behind the cushion. And then when he went, she passed me my phone, and she rung my mum. Like, so I had hold of my phone, and I remember we was stood right next to like the window thing, making sure he'd gone. And then I said, please ring my mum. Obviously I was hurting, I was crippled over, I was in agony, but you physically can't cry in front of him because it's just a no-go zone. And then she rang my mum, and then within 10 minutes, my mum's partner come to get me as though he was a hero.
Even though he's just as bloody bad.
He sent me to get my what for, and that was my what for.
So that was his plan all along?
Yeah, he knew I'd get in. He knew that's what had happened to me. Even though all the time that I lived there, I never saw my mum and my mum's partner. Not once did they come. Once they dropped me off to move in with him, that was it. I didn't see them until I rung them, saying that's what happened.
So you had to leave one hellhole to go back to another?
Yeah, because I had nowhere else to go, nowhere else to turn.
You were literally having to choose one version of hell for another at this age?
Yeah.
My God. How awful on so many levels. Did you ever at this point try and reach out to anybody else, or did you were just so scared, so shut down?
I did when I went back to my mum's. I started going to the social services office in Royton. So it used to be like 10 minutes walk from my school in Royton town centre. And it was at the main social services office, and I used to walk there after school, and I used to sit in there and I used to say, look, I cannot go home. This is what's happening. Like, he's hitting me, he's doing this, that and the other. But when I told the teachers about when he hit me last time, when I said I met my foster sister and she said to go and tell her, the social services didn't come out for 2 weeks to take me for a medical at the hospital. So by the time the 2 week come, I had no bruises, so they all deemed me to be a liar. So I was just a liar. I was a problem child. I was just bad behaved. I was just anything but just a child wanting to be loved and to go back home. Like, I was anything but that. So I'd go into the social services office and I'd beg them, and they'd be like, well, there's nothing we could do. I said, please just like give me a flat, put me in a children's home, please, like anything, take me back to my foster parents. They went, there's nothing we could do. If you don't leave the premises, we're going to get you took out by security. I was 14 years old when that happened.
I'm speechless. Like, what the fuck?
I was crying my eyes out. It's all in my notes and everything. Like, I was crying my eyes out.
I feel so angry, so angry for what they did to you. The social services colluded with the abuse. They became the abuser. By doing that, they were neglecting you. So they are just as abusive because they are colluding with the abusers by not believing you. 2 weeks. Look, I know because I used to get the belt often enough. Bruises disappear. It doesn't mean it doesn't. Very, very, very few. I'm sure there's the occasional time, but very, very few. And we should never, by the way, when a child says they're being abused, you always believe the child. It's that simple. There are very, very, very few cases where a child has lied. And if they have, there is something sinister going on still that doesn't just get pushed away. You need to look at what the child is saying and why they're lying if it's a lie. There's something terrible going on for them to lie in the first place.
Yeah.
So if that was the case, which it isn't, and I would say nearly all cases it isn't, by the way, if that was the case, you still need to investigate what on earth is going on for the child to lie in the first place. And there can be a whole multitude of reasons why. We don't just push them away and say, we're not, there's nothing we can do. You're basically sending them to a den of lions. And you are an abuser. They were abusing you. They were, because they neglected you. That is a form of abuse. And I don't know how these people can sleep at night. I don't know how they can sleep at night. It's abhorrent. So at 14 years old, you're in tears, you're being pushed away again. What then happens?
I just had to just get on with things. I've just tried to get by. I remember, I don't know if it was the first time I moved in my mum's or the second time when I left his house, but I remember, like, obviously what was going on. And I was there was a football tournament at a school that I was part of, and I went there after school, but obviously no one came to watch me anymore. But I went and I scored 2 goals in the first half. I'll never forget it. And then the second half, I went in there and we won that tournament. I've still got my trophy. And after that, we got dropped off at school. So my school was in Brighton, and we lived like 35 minutes. It was like 45 minute walk. But instead of getting the bus home, I just walked. I just used to get rid of my bus ticket and walk and just say I lost it, because it was just easier being outside the house than being in the house. So obviously I won that tournament. I had this trophy. I was like just proper buzzing all the way home, like proper, like just feeling like that, like elated again, you know, like on a high. Like everyone, I felt like I belonged for once. And everyone was like just proper buzzing and was happy to be around me. Like, it weren't that I had to try and fit in. Like, it was just all like a proper team. And then I got home proper late. Obviously, I'd been to a tournament and then I'd walked home. And I walked in with this trophy, and literally just as walking up my street, it's like everything. Like, someone had just trotted on me or something, because my high just went to an immediate low and reality kicked in, and I walked through the house, and I've got this trophy in my hand, and my mum's partner, he went, you're grounded. I went, I've just been in a football tournament. It went, I don't care what you've been in, you're grounded. You can sit there's your tea on the table. So it was cheesy beans and toast. But obviously it'd been sat there hours. I didn't even like cheesy beans, but and he made me sit at the table for 2 hours looking at this cheesy beans because I physically couldn't get it down my throat, and then sent me to bed. So it was just like nothing I did made anyone proud. So from that moment, I think it was the set after I just left the man's house. From that moment, I just thought, what is the point in trying anymore? Like, who am I actually trying for? Who actually cares?
Because at that age you have not learnt that actually you're worth trying for, because everybody that was supposed to love you has let you down and hurt you. So you have no self-esteem, no reason to fight for yourself. It is about, obviously at that age, it is about getting love off of your community, your parents, your friends, your siblings, your neighbours, your friends at school, your teachers, the vicar, whoever it is. At that age, that's what it's about. That's how we learn to love ourselves. That's how we build our self-esteem. That's how we know that we're valued. So of course, you're doing this in the hope that someone goes, wow, what a clever, brilliant, amazing girl you are. But then when you realise that nothing you do, in fact, if anything, everything you do just lands you into another form of abuse, force feeding you to eat cold food, sending you to bed, grounding you. So where you should be congratulated and loved and held up on a pedestal, even if it's just for a day, you're being punished.
Yeah,
and you've learned to completely split off from yourself, because why would anyone know how to love themselves if they've been through the horrors that you've experienced? It's just not going to happen, is it? It's just not going to happen. All the magnets that are being laid in your brain body system tell you that you're worthless, tell you that you're there to be hurt, tell you that you're there to be abused, tell you that you're not seen, you're not heard, you don't matter. And that was never true, by the way. You were surrounded by, be it the teachers, be it the social services, be it the arseholes that called themselves your parents. These were all people that destroyed every part of your childhood, and you were never the problem, ever. And you will never be the problem. You're part of the answer to a lot of darkness in this world. So you realise at this point that nothing you do matters, nothing you do is going to work.
No.
Where do you go from there?
So I started just sleeping out on the streets. I got myself a job, and I'd get like £7 in for 2 hours after school. So I used to just go to the black market and buy a crate of alcohol, and I used to just stand in the valley and just drink and offer my friends drink. But some of them there was calling me stupid for what I was doing, but it was there was no way out, So I just started doing that, and then I found out that so the man's girlfriend who protected me when I lived with them, they'd split up because he was having a relationship with a 14-year-old girl. And her school found out through the emailing on the school computers, and so they split up. So I ended up moving in with her I was in year 11, and
wow. So she took you on?
Yeah, she took me on. I was there. I felt stable. I managed to get my GCSEs. I started college, but then she fell pregnant, so I had to move out. So then
So how long were you there for?
I was there for about just over a year.
And your biological mum and your mum's partner, they're just given up by this point. They don't care.
Yeah, it's an hard one. My mum, it is an hard one, but I have to stress my mum does have her own story. Over the years, when I was younger, I'd show hate towards her. I'd say nasty things. I'd rebelled against her. But I will come to that. Obviously, I can't speak too much on my mum's story, but I won't punish my mum anymore because my mum has her own story and she's been through a lot. And if I punished her, I'd just be doing what they want me to do, and that would just isolate my mum, and she don't deserve it Like, some people have
That's
to
fair.
fight about them, and some people go into a bit of a shell. And my mum, she's gone into a bit of a shell. She's very, very timid. I know that's probably hard for people to understand, and it has been hard for me, but we will get to some of that.
Okay, that's fair. But at this point, it's fair to say that because you've spent a lot of time on the streets and you're now, or you have stayed with your biological dad's the man from the park, ex-girlfriend, when she's pregnant, you've got to leave. And so you're on the streets again.
I went back to my mum's.
You went back to your mum's. Okay.
Yeah.
So what happened then? Because that must have been so hard for you to have to go back.
Yeah, it was, because I knew I wanted them, and like, I don't know if anyone can relate, but if you're in an environment that you know you're not wanted, it's just easy for you to not be there, because it plays on your head that you're just not wanted, and you can't ever build yourself up in an environment around that. So I'd rather not be on eggshells. I'd rather just get off, but I had nowhere to go. And then I found out that one of my friends who was she was a year older than me in school, but when I originally went to the park, she lived on my street, so she was there when the man told me that he was my dad. Do you know what I mean? So I managed to get in touch with her, and she just had a baby. And I ended up staying at her house because she'd have people in drinking all the time and that. And obviously, like, at first I thought that was cool, but then I saw, like, the baby was around that, so I started becoming full-time carer for that baby, as well as trying to do a full college course. So instead of being there during the day, I'd take the baby to the man's mum, so my biological dad's mum, so she was my nana, but she literally lived like 5 minutes from this girl's house, so it was just a safe place to take the baby to, So I used to go and sit at my nana's all the time. And then I'd take the baby back, and I remember I was just stood at the front door, just trying to get somewhere. Like, she had people in her house all the time, like, and obviously she was a young mom, she had a baby, and like, people just took advantage of it, So, but I was just stood at the front door, and my phone went, and I answered the phone. Now, my middle name used to be Louise, and his nickname for me was Lulu. I can't stand it. Like, it actually makes me feel a bit sick when I say it, but I've answered the phone and he's gone, Lulu. And I just knew who it was. No one ever calls me that. And I'd not spoke to him since he broke my ribs. Do you know what I mean? And he's like, I've been speaking to your nana. So I was like, okay. Obviously, I didn't want to just put the phone down because I didn't know kind of what was what, And I think at that point, like, I was naive, and I did just want someone to love me, and did just want someone to care about me, And I found over the years that I do different things to try and get that love and attention from my mum and different people, like, overly, like, people please, as they say, just to feel that little bit of self-worth, So I engaged in the conversation, and he's like, so I've got a new wife, and you've got another sibling. I see the other sibling, which is the sibling he used to take to the park. And I don't hit out anymore. I've done anger management. I've done this. I've done that. So obviously, because he's acknowledging the things that I didn't like about him and that scared me of him and different things, and he was taking accountability, I thought, I've got to respect that in my naive mind. I was only 17 at the time, and I was a very young 17 as well, because my like learning and everything, it kind of got regress sort of thing. I don't know if that's the right word, but like, it's
that's right.
I couldn't keep learning and keep adapting to my years growing up mentally to what my years was physically, So I was really young in my head, very, very young. And he's like, why don't you come over and see us? And I thought, you won't come and spend Christmas with us? And I thought, well, I'm in college, I've just got myself a job, I'll just go for 2 weeks. It's only 2 weeks. Like, I've got a college break for 2 weeks. At least I'm being around my siblings. And he's acknowledged his change. And I'll be with someone for Christmas. So I did. And he'd not changed at all. If anything, it got worse.
Oh, God. I mean, we all knew that was coming, obviously. But at that age, you don't. I can promise you, all girls that have gone through something like what you have, and like what many have, and what I have, we go for love in the wrong places because we're desperate for it. We're desperate for it, Stace. Like, You have been bereft of love and care and safety for the majority of your life. Of course you want to believe that someone has changed. Of course you want to believe that you can have a nice Christmas. I mean, this is just the bare minimum. And we do anything for love when we're desperate for it, anything. So obviously that gives us an insight into how bad it must have been. So what happens when you go back?
So I travelled down on the 22nd of December 2006 it was. I get mixed up because everything just happened in a short space of time, but it was 2006. And when I travelled down there, and he met me in London, and then we had to get the underground tubes to Essex. And that whole way there, he didn't even speak one word to me. Like, not one word to me at all. So it was just like that tension, that awkward tension, you know, where you want to speak, but you can't really gauge the situation here. Because I knew what he was, but then he's told me a completely different story, you know. And he'd had his new partner messaging me, like, constantly, do you know, like, so I was, like, quite friendly with her, because we used to talk, like, every day, and she would make an effort with me, which reminded me of his previous partner. And we arrived in Southend, and when I got off, so there was my two siblings, his partner there, waiting, and then we had to walk up Southend High Street. And as I'm looking, his partner literally looked so young. So we got up, walked up, and then there was a carpet shop there, and he lived above the carpet shop. So we've gone in and that, and I walked in the front room. So you go up some stairs, and then you've got a hallway. And because it was above a shop, it was a weird set out. So you'd have the living room here, but his bedroom was off his living room. And then you'd have the kitchen. And then you come back out to the hallway, and you'd have some stairs straight up, and that'd be the room of the whole upstairs, like a massive, massive bedroom. And I've gone in the kitchen, and next minute, he's throwing all this paperwork at me. He's like, look, I told you I didn't do that. Look, this weren't me. Oh, look, was that. I've been travelling like 10 hours, and that's not what I went for, you know. So I was confused. And I said, like, is there anywhere I can put my stuff? And he went, yeah, upstairs. One side split for your sibling and one side split for you. So I was like, right, so I've gone upstairs. As I walked in the bedroom, I could feel him stood behind me. So I've gone like that, and he's there behind me, you know. So I've gone to put my stuff down, and he went, where's your coach ticket? So I pulled it out of my coat pocket. I thought, well, he's just going to look after it, or he's just going to put it safe, you know. Passed it him. He went, you won't be needing that. I was like, what? And then he was like, right, you have to call my partner mum, because your siblings call mum. She was 19. She was only 2 years older than me.
Oh my God.
So, and obviously, like, the mum word, and even the dad word, like, it's hard in it, because obviously it reminds me of my foster mum and dad. So for me to call someone that, like, there has to be a level of something there, you know. I can't just say things to me and make it true, because I just can't. And,
to be honest, even, I mean, for you it's a million times worse, but for anyone to call someone 2 years older than themselves mum would be weird, and they wouldn't want to do it.
No, but I just thought, right, respect the household, you know, that's what he's asking me to do, fine, I'll do it. Felt weird, like, very weird. And whatnot. And then over the next couple of days, like, he took my phone off me, he'd take over my social medias, which it was only like my MSN and my college emails and stuff back then. And yeah, then I started seeing how he was, and that he'd not changed. Yeah, he bullied his partner, like severely bullied. I can't really go into too much of her story, but no, the way he treated her was not okay. It was not nice. Luckily, she managed.
We can imagine.
Yeah, no, honestly, like, I could still hear her screams in my head sometimes. So there was one example which I can say. So she was on crutches, and I used to get up in the middle of the night to my youngest, to the baby sibling. Like, it was only a couple months old, and this one day he went, "You won't be getting up, she will." And I was like, she's on crutches. She was on a Zimmer frame at first, but then she managed to walk because she had like weak legs. You know, don't really know much about what was wrong with her. Just know that much. And I've gone sleep on the settee because I used to sleep on the settee because I used to have to get up with the youngest baby in the middle of the night. You know, like everything was how it used to be. I used to have to look after my siblings, do the cleaning, whatever. And I've dozed off, and I thought I could hear this piercing cry. Like, and I mean, I can't even explain the piercing cry. Someone severely in pain just screech out. I've jumped over the settee. I've gone in the bedroom. He's sat in bed with a fag in his mouth, laughing his head off, honestly. And I've looked down the side, and his partner's on the floor with the baby in his arms. So what he's done, he's hid her crutches, made her walk from the bed to the cot to pick my sibling up. The weight of my sibling in her arms has just threw her to the floor. Nah.
Wow.
And he's literally
That
just
is
sat
painful.
in bed laughing. So I've obviously picked my sibling up, put him back in the cot, helped her up, helped her into the kitchen to sit down, like took my sibling in, put the kettle on to make the bottle, realised the dummy wasn't in there. I've walked in the bedroom, got the dummy out of the bedroom, he's gone Lulu. I've turned around, he just smacked me in my jaw, just shattered my tooth right into my gum.
Oh God, Stace, this is just horrific.
That's how bad it was with her. And then the next morning, she come and she managed to leave. You know, but yeah, it was horrible. And then once she left, it was like it fully turned on me. Then, you know.
So basically, you protected her and enabled her in those last hours to find some level of strength to get out. But unfortunately, for sure. But you know, she was a kid. I've got a daughter who's 19 this year. She was a child.
Yeah.
She was a child. And what he did to her, he's a psychopath. I mean, I think we know, because I told everyone at the beginning of the story the synopsis, I guess, of what this is about. But he's a monster. And that poor girl included, I mean, you gave her some level of strength. Someone somewhere loved her enough to help her. And the sad thing about that is that then you were the prime target once she'd gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, we also have to just say that story is just, I've got no words. I'm struggling to find any way of being able to contextualize this, but I don't think most people can possibly understand how bad that abuse must have been, if that's the bit you can say. Do you know what I mean? Like it's inconceivable. And so you become prime target after this, and life must have just become worse than hell.
Yeah, it was weird, because some days he'd be really nice, but then other days, like, so he'd lie. He'd set chairs out in the living room, and he'd make you lie across the chair and do a sit-up. And every time you physically couldn't do a sit-up because you had to put your head right back. He was very military. He was never in the army. He did his army training, got discharged back in 1989 when I was born. He's never been in the army, but he buys medals offline. He buys uniforms offline. He goes and does parade days. He parades up and down, like poppy days and different things like that, and perceives himself as though he was in the army and he served in this and he served in that, you know. So people like idolise him, but he's never been in it. He was fully discharged when I was a baby. But so he had some military aspect about him, and if your head worked right back, then you'd get jabbed in your stomach. If you didn't complete the full sit-up, you'd get jabbed in your stomach. And then he used to tell me stories about I was the only kid with a six-pack, because he used to punch me consistently in the stomach when I was a baby, to the point where he was proper jabbing me, and my pram would bounce on two wheels and bounce back, and he buzzed off that. He buzzed off the thought of that. And then there'd be other times we watched a football film, and he stood me up against the wall, and he grabbed a bank card, and he put it in my mouth. Now, he used to grab me by the neck all the time and slam me against his bedroom door and punch me in the stomach, or go to punch me in the stomach, because he thrived off that he could do that. So I'm thinking he's going to punch me, and he just got right in my face and just started proper smirking, saying, "Oh, I can give you a Chelsea grin. So if I punch you now, like, your face would split all the way, do you know?" So it was just a fear factor. And then I'd get in the bath. He'd get in the bath with me. So then it made me not want a bath. And then my hair'd go really greasy, but I didn't want to get in a bath, didn't feel safe. And he didn't go out long enough for me to have a bath while he was out. And he'd be like, "Let me wash your hair because it's greasy." So obviously don't say no to him. So I went over to the kitchen sink. I boiled the kettle, and then he poured the kettle water. So I'm screaming, I'm patting my head. And he was like, "Oh, I thought I mixed it." He didn't, because he was full on laughing. Like, he just had this proper smirky laugh about him. And then he went and did it again. So he threw kettle water over my head twice and was laughing. So I was full on screaming. And then another time, so I was cleaning, and I'd have to put do the washing, and I'd put like a darks in, and he'd come to the kitchen door, and he'd hold like a white coloured top, and he'd be like, "I want this one." I was like, "I'll put it in next." It'd come round like the breakfast counter. So you had the washing machine, you had the breakfast counter, and then you had the kitchen door here. And then the rest of it was like a dining table and like a bit of the kitchen. You had the fridge here, and then all the worktop things there. And he'd come round the breakfast counter, and he'd just sweep me to the floor with his feet. And I'd try getting back up. And then he'd boot me to the floor, and he's like, "Do you want to get back up?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, beg to get back up then. And every time I begged to get back up, he'd let me get like that little bit further, and then just boot you down. Like, he thrived off that control of being able to do these things.
I mean, what goes on in your head at this point? I mean, your survival, you probably can't even think or do it. You probably have no ability to switch on to thought at that point. You just like a frightened animal, I'd imagine.
Yeah, and I would just let him do what he's going to do, because then once it's over, then it's over, because I couldn't fight against him. I was never strong enough. A few times I tried, but there was literally nothing I could do. And then I'd think, right, at least it's me getting it and not my sibling getting it, you know. And I knew I couldn't go anywhere or do anything. And then he'd start bringing girls round to the house and try and make me do things with girls in front of him. Then he'd sit me on the end of his bed and stay in the bedroom while he's actually having sexual intercourse with a girl. I was like, I'd never been like that. I was always into my football and stuff, so I was never like a sexual like teenager or anything like that. So I just couldn't comprehend what he was trying to do, you know. And then one time he had a girl in the bedroom, and I went out and I got his car keys, and I went and started his car, and I just wanted to try and get away, but I didn't know how to turn the car on. And I thought, if I start it and I do start driving, what if I crash into someone and they've got a baby in the car? Like, I'm thinking I can't. And then I'm thinking I wouldn't even know how to drive back to Oldham, you know. So then I'm turning the engine off, and all the reality comes into me. It's like, literally, there's nowhere for you to go. There's no point in going to the police, because they didn't do anything all the times I told them. The social services didn't do anything all the times I told them. Like, I can't bring my mum, because I did bring my mum in the first week that I was there and asked if she can come and get me, but she didn't drive. My mum's partner drove, and he turned around and said, "I can't drive out of Oldham without a sat-nav." So it was just like, where do I go from here?
So what did you do?
I just lived it out. He started telling me to top myself. He started telling me that he could kill me and tell everyone that I travelled back to Oldham and I didn't make it. And I'm thinking, he actually could do these things, you know. Like, the reality is, he could do it.
Yeah.
And then he'd start driving to like park places, like when you go to a park and you've got like that sandy car park sort of thing, and it's dead secluded, and like you've got like the greenery around and stuff. There was a couple of places in Essex, so I know one of them was Priory Park. And he'd start going there, and he'd be like, "You want me to be nice to you, don't you?" And he'd start trying to touch me and stuff, and touching me inappropriately. And the night before my 18th birthday,
So after endless years of abuse, physical abuse, mental abuse, emotional abuse, coercive abuse, sexual abuse, you've had every type of abuse. You've been suffering beyond what most people, we can't imagine it. And then the night before your 18th birthday, he takes you to this secluded place and rapes you.
He did it in the house. He did that in the house while my sibling was upstairs.
So, and I'd imagine that you can't not think about your sibling at the same time, because you're aware of them being there, trying to protect them from what's going on. Was that what was in your mind at the same time as well? Because it sounds like you've become a second mother to them.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, that was in my head. And to be honest, I didn't actually understand what was going on. Like I said, I was very young-minded in my head. I was only ever into my football. Like, I had a boyfriend when I first lived with him, and like we didn't do nothing. Like we was just pretty much friends. When I look back now, that relationship was just friends, So I didn't actually understand, and I was so confused. And then afterwards, I was just in so much pain, and I just like tried to get myself upstairs, but I was hurting. And then in the morning, I've got my sibling in my face. "Quick, come down. Dad wants to give you his presents, and I want to sing happy birthday to you." So I've had to walk downstairs, act like nothing's ever happened. I don't know how I did it. I walk in his bedroom, because that's where he was. I sat on the bed, and my sibling's giving me a card, and he's just all smiles and all happy in my face, and I just had to act like everything was all right.
And how is the man behaving with you at this point?
Like nothing has happened. Like nothing has happened.
So your sense of reality must be so skewed. Like, it's unbelievable horror, unbelievable trauma, and yet everything is like it's supposed to be normal.
Yeah.
Was that the only time that he did that? I mean, obviously he's been sexually abusing you in other ways, but
no, he raped me a few times. He would take us to Kent and tell me that he didn't bring me up, so no one would know that he was my dad. He tried to normalise it. He told the people in like the Kent houses, like the showroom things, that we was together, and he'd make me dress in like girly clothes. Like, I've always wore tracksuits. I don't ever like to look like anyone's looking at me to like find me attractive and things. And he'd make me dress in like a skirt and stuff to go to the pub. You have to dress and look older because we're going pub, and I'm going to tell everyone you're my girlfriend, and just weird things. And then he'd go on like chat rooms, and he'd go in an all girls chat room. And so he used to do this with his partner, but obviously she'd left. So when he was on it, and some people would question that he's not female, he would make me sit in front of the camera knowing all these sexual things that he's been saying to these people.
So he was pretending to be you, and you were having to pretend to be him.
He was pretending to be his ex-partner, but I had to step in as though I was there. Yeah.
I mean, this is deranged. It's. Where is he now? Is he in prison?
No. Nope.
Wow. I mean, look, that's me skipping ahead, but I think a lot of people will be thinking, where is he now? You know, it's okay. So, when does this end for you? Like, what happens? Because obviously this is beyond a living hell. I can't even use words to this. I don't think anyone could describe this. There's no words in the language that anyone knows that describes this type of hell. So what happens? How did you get out of this?
So what it was, I started feeling really poorly. Obviously, like I said, I couldn't grasp what had actually happened, you know. And I told him I was going to connections, and I wasn't. I was going to the doctors. I went to the doctors, and there was like, "Could you be pregnant?" And I was like, "No," because in my mind I thought you have to be in a relationship, you have to plan to have a baby. Like I said, I was very naive, you know. I was. And I feel stupid saying that's how I felt, but that's the truth of it, you know.
Don't feel stupid. There's nothing stupid about it.
And then, so the doctor was like, "Oh well, everything else is fine. I want you to take this pregnancy test home and do it." So I just put it in my pocket. I just thought, oh whatever, like being a bit of a strop, you know. Like, I don't understand like why he's just said that. I'm walking down the street and I have to walk past connections to then go up. And I've gone in. And I've gone in the toilet and I'm like really reading this leaflet. I had no idea what I was doing anyway. I did it, and the test come back like positive, you know. And I just put it in my pocket. Like nothing clicked in my head by this point. And I'm walking down the street, and I'm walking up towards the house. And the penny dropped. And I thought, it's not just me anymore. I thought, I am. That's what's happened. That's what he's done, do you know? And my brain had only just started processing all these things. And I've gone in, and obviously he's got mad because obviously I'd been out, you know, long. And he grabbed me, like I said, he used to do it all the time anyway. Grabbed me around my throat, slammed me against, because obviously his bedroom was in the living room, like there was a door and then it was his bedroom. Slammed me against the door, and he went like out with his fist. I thought, now he's going to make me, and I don't know how I did it. But I managed to get like, I'm pregnant, and he just dropped me to the floor and booted me in my face.
For God's sake. So you've just found out you're pregnant because of your biological father, and his response to that is to kick you in the face.
Yeah, because he couldn't hit me in the stomach. Well, he could have done. I don't know what stopped him, but yeah, he didn't.
I mean, it's a miracle that he didn't, because he's literally got no empathy, no remorse, no nothing. So how long is it before? I mean, how did you escape this? What happened next?
So for the next few days, he was telling me that my baby would be disabled. Like, there's things with the blood. Obviously, like, I was not in the know. Like, I know now, like, that could have been the case, you know. But back then, I didn't. I just thought he was telling me these things. But it really sat in my head. So he's telling me, like, it's going to be disabled. It's coming out with all these horrible names for people with disabilities, which I won't rethink because I just don't like it. Don't think it's nice. And he'd be like, you need to get rid of it, you need to do this. And I actually don't know where I found my fire from. I was like, no, I was got rid of, and I'm not doing that. And then he was like, well, what are you going to do? And I was like, I don't know. And he went, well, it's DNA, because it was back in 2007 that I was pregnant, and 2008. And he went, there's a DNA thing coming out in hospitals where it's legal, where you have to give DNA to obviously provide the child's DNA. He went, you're not to give that DNA. And I said, well, everyone knows that I live here and stuff. And I think I just like talked him to let me go to my mum's. So what it was, I said, can I go to my mum's? And then when the baby's born, I'll come back. So I ended up in this kind of warped game, you know, but it was one that I had to play. I weren't getting out of that house alive. Like, honestly, I was stressed out. I wasn't. And right, so when he grabbed me by the throat and that, I'd rung, like, he went out the morning after, but I knew where he had a phone, and I rung the police. And I didn't tell him about anything, but I told him that he tried strangling me. And I had to go and meet a police officer in Essex. They told me to go to Frankie Benny's, but instead of walking right, I've turned left. And I ended up at Sainsbury's. So the police officer come and met me at Sainsbury's and then drove back towards the house, but not like where it would have been safe. And I was telling him, obviously, about my thing, about this, about he tried to strangle me, and he took pictures of my fingerprints on my neck and stuff. And he was like, well, I need to come in. I said, you can't come in this house because you're going to come in, he's going to say a story, you're going to leave this house, and I'm going to end up dead. You know, like, I'm not getting out of this house alive. Anyway, I said, please, just ring my mum. And I passed the police officer my mum's number. So when I was in the house and I was asking, can I go back to my mum's till the baby's born and then go back with him? When he was ringing my mum, I was just praying that my mum didn't say the police had been in touch, do you know what I mean? Luckily she didn't, and he concocted a story. So I went to Southend Show. I met some guy there. I disappeared with some guy, and England was playing on the telly, and Scott Carson was in there and John Terry in defence, and he turned around and went, oh, and the guy was called John Carson. I'll never forget it. Like, I can literally picture it all as though I'm sat in that room. And he's like, anyway, she's come back and that, and we found out she's pregnant. And then he was like, she's going to have to come to you. Someone went, okay. And then, he allowed my mum to buy me a coach ticket. But he won't let me get it from Southend. He made me drag all my stuff through Victoria Station, knowing that I was pregnant and that, in London. So, like, we had to proper trek. But the lead up to that, because I think that year, so his birthday is the 20th of June, and I'm sure Father's Day was either I think Father's Day might have fell on the 20th of June that year. I might be wrong, but I think it was. So that day was like a big day, and then the 22nd of June is when I got out. So on Father's Day, like, I was just praying, like, I stay out of the way, I just keep my head down, you know, because if anything rises here, he's not going to let me out of this house. And that's how I got out.
My God, how, I mean, I don't know how you managed to make that work, because by this point you are, like you say, death is the only thing that's on the cards. That's the only certainty at that point. The fact that you got out is, that is a miracle from God, quite frankly, that you've got out of that house. So you go to your mum's, and obviously she thinks it's someone called John Carson. And what happens? Because is she still with the partner that was violent to you?
Yeah, vaguely. But my mum, like, so they'd split up for a little while and they just got back together. But I think in that while that was split up, my mum had a bit of a wake up call. Like, she actually became herself a little bit more, you know, and she had a bit more strength about her. But so I got on the coach in London Victoria, and when the coach set off and I knew I was away, like, honestly, I felt so much relief, but I don't know how I got out of that situation. I'm just thankful I did, you know. And if I hadn't have caught pregnant, I don't think that would have been the case, like, at all. But then, so I felt like a proper relief and weight off my shoulders. Like, you know, he'd give me a phone, but only a phone that he could text on. But it was like a Microsoft phone, so you could only charge it through his computer. So I kept pressing buttons on this phone, thinking the quicker this phone dies, the quicker he can't contact me, you know, because I was just getting bombarded with messages. And then soon as the coach landed in Oldham bus station, and I seen my mum's partner's car and my mum, as I got off that, literally, the only way I can describe it is the credits of a film rolling behind me. That is the only way I can describe it. And it's like I've got out of one thing, and then I couldn't be free. I wasn't myself. I had no transitional period from being a child to a teenager. Now I've got no transitional period of being a child, like a teenager, to a mum. Do you know, like, what? Like, I couldn't comprehend all this adaptation. It was just hard. And I just knew it was going to be difficult, but at the same time, I had to keep the secret. So I went to my mum's, and I ended up, so my daughter was born in February 2008, and all the way through the pregnancy, like, I'd have like 3-4 baths a day. I'd be trying to count her fingers and her toes in my belly. I know it sounds strange, but I did, because I had it fixated
It
in my head
doesn't.
that she was going to be disabled, And I couldn't speak to anyone. I couldn't tell the people at the pregnancy scans. I couldn't tell my mum. I couldn't tell my partner. I had no friends. I was completely isolated. No one had contacted me because I wasn't living in Oldham anymore for that amount of time. I'd obviously dropped out of college. I didn't turn up for work. I had no job to go back to. So it was just hard. It was lonely. It was isolating. And every time you'd go out and your bump was getting bigger and everyone's like, oh, who's the dad? Reality. Every single time, to the point where I just lived in my bedroom for the last 3 months of my pregnancy. And that it was difficult. And then she was born and she was just perfect. So, like, there was nothing wrong with her. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, there is something wrong with her, but they don't know what they're looking for. There's going to be something wrong with her. They can't see it. How am I supposed to tell her? And then I'm looking over my shoulder. I'm scared to sleep in the hospital because I'm scared that it's going to come through the hospital doors. I had my mum and a partner stay there the whole time I was there. Luckily, it was allowed back then, I had to go to surgery after she was born, and I had to leave her with my mum's partner. So he gave her her first bottle, so that was hard, and I couldn't bath her because I felt like I was abusing her when I bathed her, because I didn't know what normality was. Like, my sense of normality just was gone. And then I got my first house.
I mean, it robbed you of everything. Just like I've got to say this because, like you've just said there, you've had no childhood or very little childhood. The childhood that you had that was safe, you found out was a lie. Then it's just been nothing but horror, nothing but horrific abuse, horror, hell. And then even as a mother, you can't even bath your own child because you were abused in the bath. You can't even feed her for the first time. You have to let one of your abusers feed her because you've got to have surgery. You can't share this beautiful moment with people because of who the dad is. You can't get rid of her because you knew what it was like to be considered to be worthless, and you could never do that to another human life. I mean, everything about this is just shocking and heartbreaking and another level of unbelievable. It really is. And you've had so much stolen from you. So much. And you're so lovely and you're so sweet. And, just to say this before you carry on, between, setting this up, it was much easier to do this online for varying different reasons, geographically and financially and all of those things. So we've done this online, but the messages between us, you're so sweet and so lovely and just such a polite, kind human being. It's a miracle. I really believe in God existing in some form, right? Yeah. I don't necessarily subscribe to any particular religion, but I do believe in a higher power. And I do believe that has been your guiding force. I know at times it wouldn't have felt like it, but the fact you made it out alive and the fact you're here to tell the story is a miracle. You are a miracle. So let's go back to these first few months of being a mum.
It was hard, and then the longer time got and I didn't go back to him, the more I was scared that he'd turn up, but I'd got all this, so your brain doesn't just process overnight, and I've only just started learning this, So even like when I was going through the pregnancy and being at my mum's and then giving birth to her and everything else, like, things were still so scrambled in my head what had actually happened.
Of course.
I literally had no outlet. There was no way I could speak because he told me if I ever told anyone, he'd find me and my baby and them threats were real. I know what he's capable of. He tried coming back to Oldham with me by contacting an ex-partner that he used to be with, the one that he used to live with. And because she was diabetic, he was asking her for an insulin pen so he can inject the partner that was living with him when he was in Essex so we could get custody of their baby. And because she wasn't diabetic, he would have. He told me, I don't know the facts of all the science around it, but he told me if he injected her with that insulin, that would kill her. And that was his thought process. So I knew these threats were real, I don't say it lightly. And so that I was living with that every day. And then I got my first house and I really struggled. And I started going out, just wanting to belong. Just wanting to fit in somewhere because I couldn't tell anyone the realisticness of my home life, my background life, what I'd just gone through. It just weren't spoke about. I'd never heard of anything or anyone in my situation back then. And then when my daughter was 3, I was scrolling Facebook and I always tried to keep him on social media in some sort of way, not like have him as a friend or anything, but always search his account. Because he always told me he's always know what I'm doing, he's always one step ahead. And I believed him because throughout my life, he's fully controlled every situation and everyone was scared of him.
Yeah.
And I saw it just got with someone else. Well, not just got with someone else, but it got with somebody else. And she just had a baby who had just turned 1.
Oh, my God.
And then obviously my daughter was 2, and then the baby that he had in Essex, they were 3. So he'd had 3 kids within the space of 3 years, and it was a little girl. I couldn't live with myself. I had to ring the police.
Yeah. I mean, these were all young girls as well, I'm assuming. They were vulnerable young girls.
The last one, I think she was more his age, but I know of a few young girls that, yeah.
So, but he was going for vulnerable people. He thrived on vulnerable people. Like you say, the one when you were living in the house that left, she had some sort of disability or some kind of muscular weakness. So he thrived on picking vulnerable people.
Yeah.
And even his own daughter, which just tells you everything. I mean, this is just horrific. So you rang the police.
Yeah, and I said, I need to report rape. And the woman, I just remember, because I was stood over the fireplace with my phone and I had a mirror and I'm trying to look at myself in the mirror, but I can't. It was like I was ashamed of myself for ringing the police. And the woman was talking to me. She went, we're going to send one of our officers out to your house. I was like, right. And then obviously that phone call ended. And then within 24 hours, I think, a woman officer come in and she took a statement. But my statement was, what I gave was so vague, and it weren't that I weren't telling the truth. It was just that I didn't have the mental strength to go into every single thing at that time.
Of course not.
And then my mum didn't know anything. No one knew anything. And the police had to come and take DNA from me. They had to come and take DNA from my daughter and then DNA from my mum. So it was the police who actually told my mum as well.
What did your mum do?
Nothing.
She didn't say anything?
I think because of her own story, that might have been challenging for her. I'm not making excuses. I just know now it's it is difficult in it, But nothing.
Yeah.
I felt so lonely. I just felt I had nowhere to go. It would have been nice to have someone to run to, someone to just open up to, just not feel judged, not feel like I'm a problem. Feel like I had some self-worth, but that just wasn't there. It just wasn't visible.
I mean, I have to say this as well, for anyone that's had a baby, the first few months, but the first couple of years are really hard. We're even in the happiest of situations. For some people, the hormonal changes, the life change, just being a mum, it's scary on its own, but you're being a mum, through unbelievable circumstances, and having to, by the age your daughter is 3, go through the police, and you're on your own, and you've got no support, and everything about this is scary, and just fear. Most of us know fear on some level, but the level of fear that you've dealt with is just, it's you can't, there's no words for it. I mean, I'm very often articulate on these shows, but I'm struggling today because it's so bad. You know, this is so hard for me, and I listen to this sort of stuff, like I said, unfortunately quite a lot, and I'm really struggling not to, and I don't mean to make this about me because it's your story, but I'm really struggling not to cry here. It's a really, really hard story. It's not a story, it's a really, really hard experience. And again, I think the reason that is so important now more than ever to hear these stories is we only have to look at what's going on across the world. Power, control, psychopathy at every level. And we have to use our voices to beat these fuckers. We've got to talk about it. We can't be hidden away and lonely. And I'm sure there's people that are going through things right now that just don't think that there's a way out. But your story shows that there is, because you had all the strength of 1,000 kings and queens inside your body, and you fought and fought and fought. So you've gone to the police to say that your biological father has raped you, that you've fallen pregnant. You can't tell them all the details because you don't know how to. You don't know how to. No, you, and actually years later, and I can say this even with my own story, there's bits that I'd completely forgotten until a few years ago. And, you know, yeah, it comes back in waves. It doesn't all come back in one go. No. So you often can't, when you give, and I think I've said this on other podcasts actually, when you give a statement to the police, you can't possibly remember everything, because even just talking to the police, anyone that's never given a statement, I don't know if yours was the same, but it certainly was for me. They sit in front of you, they write, I mean, back then it was pen and paper, they write everything down. You have to repeat the same information again and again because they want, for me, it was about 4 hours of giving a statement. From what I can recall, it could have been longer, but you have to repeat again. They ask you to answer the question again because they've got to get it right. So that in itself is a confronting situation, and it's really hard to remember everything because you're already nervous and anxious and scared and lost and confused, and your brain can't quite muddle together properly. So of course that first time of speaking to the police, you would not have been able to give all the information. It just wouldn't. Most people can't.
It was strange as well. It was strange as well because when I went into the police station to do my video interview, the police officer already knew me. So she come up to me, she introduced herself to me, and she went, "I knew you when you was a baby." I was like, "What?" She went, "Yeah, I interviewed your mum and your dad on the charges of non-accidental injuries. So when I was 18 months old, I had broken legs, bruises and bite marks. And the officer who was interviewing me for the charges against him had already interviewed my mum and him over these non-accidental injuries when I was a baby." So that completely threw my head.
And they let you carry on being with these people. I mean, I know that there was a charge of child sex offence anyway, but with even direct abuse towards you, they let you carry on being in the care of these people.
Yeah, because no one actually got convicted because blame was passed between 3 people. And because they couldn't identify exactly who'd done it, there were no charges. But the police officer literally, like before I went in for my interview, told me this information and told me I could always reopen that case. So I don't even know what that means. But like, yeah, that was, it was all known. Everyone was known. And she knew who I was. That completely threw me, you know, when I went in and that. And then obviously, like, you go through it and all that time you feel like they're judging you and stuff. And I only told him about one time. Not because I didn't want to tell him about the whole truth. It's because my brain hadn't actually processed the whole truth. And I didn't have the strength. I didn't have the mental capacity. I didn't have the emotional capacity. I had my daughter at home. As soon as I'd done the interview and gone home and I've got my daughter and it's just me and my daughter in that house, in like a 2-bedroom house, it just felt so big and the walls were just closing in and it just felt trapped and dark and you just got nowhere to turn and you're flooded with all these feelings and you're supposed to know all the answers. You're supposed to know how to be a mum. You're supposed to know how to train things. And I didn't know about CPTSD. I didn't know about anxiety. I didn't know about depression. I didn't know about anything. I had no knowledge about anything. So I was literally in this world of unknown and just confusion.
God bless you. I mean, yeah, of course. Like you've been, like I said, you don't know, you've been in a bubble of being hurt, badly hurt. I can't even think of words. Like you've been so badly abused all of your life. How the hell are you supposed to know anything? You weren't even allowed to go to school. So everything that's normal, everything that's what life is supposed to be is stripped away from you. So you tell what you can remember, and because you can't remember it all, does that then go against you in terms of the legality of it all?
No, so what it was, so I told give them my statement and that, and then they took the DNA from me, my daughter and my mum. And at first it came back inconclusive and I was ringing them. I'm like, I'm not lying about this, like, please, like, because everything in my mind was so warped. I actually believed that I could have lied about it and I knew I hadn't. But because they're saying it's inconclusive, but then like everything was just not how it was meant to be, and there was just so much confusion like all through my life. I'm thinking like, is there something wrong with me? Like, am I the actual problem? Am I causing these scenarios?
No, you do that. You do that. You believe you're going mad.
Yeah, and I did, and then apparently someone run me back because I was so distressed about it because I just thought I would not lie about these things, like, you know. And someone rang me back and they said if it's too much of a match with DNA, it does come back inconclusive, so we have to send it for more tests. But because who he was to me, that's why anyway the next lot of tests come back and it was like a match. So then we got a court date and it was supposed to be a 4-day trial down in Chelmsford on the 11th of April 2011. Anyway, then I've travelled down to Chelmsford because I had to go back down there because that's where it fingered. So obviously that was quite triggering, you know, at that moment in time. I was in an unhealthy relationship because having anyone there at that point was safety over no safety, you know, and it was unhealthy comforts, but I didn't recognise that back then, you know. So I've travelled down there, and the night before, like when I got there, literally I was arriving in Essex, and they got changed to Basildon Crown Court, and then same time 11 o'clock on the 11th. So we'd gone into the hotel and whatnot, and in the morning. So obviously I was from Oldham, so I hadn't met like the barrister. No one had spoke to me about what was coming up, like how the court case would be, what would it look like, what would happen, who was there to support me. Like, I knew nothing. And I went in, and then at about 10, and they've got like the defendant and they've said his name. I literally crumbled on the spot. I tried running out of the court, like my mum and my mum's friend come with me. She had to grab me, stop me from running out of the court. And then we've gone in this room and my barrister's come in. She was a lovely lady, to be fair, but I obviously only met her that morning. And she was going through it. She went, "Don't worry." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And then it was supposed to be at 11, and then she come back at 1 and said, like, "We're halfway there to get in a plea." I didn't understand any of this. Like, I didn't get told anything. And then 4 o'clock come in and she said, "Oh, he's pleaded guilty. The judge is upstairs now sentencing him." Obviously, because I asked for the screen and stuff, I'd love to be able to just look him in his eyes, you know, and confront him. But in my mind at that time, I was only 21. I had a 3-year-old daughter. I was still processing things. I'd just gone through the whole court case alone, the whole pregnancy alone. Like, it was too much.
Of course it was.
So I stayed downstairs, and my mum's friend come down and she was like, "He got 7 years." And like they were shouting like, "Yes," and I was like,
7 fucking years.
Yeah, but he only did 3.5, and I only found out.
I know.
Doing my book, he got a plea bargain, so he didn't actually.
Of course he did.
Yeah, but I didn't understand any of that. I wish now I was in this frame of mind and I could go back and I could stand in front of him in his face just so we couldn't have that plea bargain, because the court said that he pleaded guilty to prevent me going through any more trauma. So it like he was doing me a favour.
Bullshit. They do it to get themselves off the hook.
Yeah, I didn't know that though. So I thought 7 years, I thought that would give me enough time to do some self-defence classes. This was all going in my head, you know, self-defence classes, I'll get myself right, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And then, so we were sentenced April 2011, and then in the August, I get a phone call saying he's getting day release to go and get access to your 1-year-old sibling. I was like, what have I just done? Like, what have I actually just done, do you know? Anyway, in the September, my ex-partner who I was with, it was an unhealthy relationship. I had no debts. They weren't living with me or nothing like that. But I ended up with bailiffs at my house, and he was talking to my daughter through the door, and I actually thought the man had sent him. So I went out with a kitchen knife and got myself a criminal record. I weren't in a state of mind. Around that time, my CPTSD was really bad. I was having visual dreams where I'd wake up completely sweating, and I had 3 chances to get away from him. The first time I tried, the second time I tried a bit harder, the third time I tried everything and I still didn't get away, you know, woke up sweating, and then I've got this man knocking on the door, and like literally an hour, 2 hours later, do you know, it was just too much.
Yeah. I mean, look, anyone in their right mind can understand why you did what you did. Anybody. You were petrified. You were living in a constant state of hypervigilance fear. You were constantly reliving some level of trauma every minute of every day. There is no one in this world that would hear that part of the story and judge you. No one. That is completely understandable. You were just besides yourself, out of your mind. There's no way anyone could feel anything other than what you did, which is complete fear 100% of the time. Yeah. I mean, the fact that you've got a criminal record is laughable. I know the guy at the door didn't necessarily deserve it, but these were very extenuating circumstances. And I know we can't go around with a knife and just lashing out at people. I get that, but like this is not something that you're just going around with a knife, you know, willy-nilly stabbing people. This was someone.
I've never been in trouble before that, and I've not been in trouble after that. Obviously, that was back in 2011. I got charged in 2012. But I told the police the circumstances and stuff. You know, I was crying out for help. I was in my cell just saying, like, what, like, this has just happened. Like, I've just put myself through a court case with no support. He's to protect my sibling, for him to try and get access to that sibling, knowing what he's done to me. Like, it's literally like I didn't matter, you know, and it was just constant. Yeah. And anyway, they continued to charge me. And then I had to have a psychological report through the solicitors, and it come back that I had 7 personalities through trauma enforced, you know.
Yeah. So what, as in DID? Or so I don't dissociative?
Know. They didn't tell me what. It just says on my notes that I've got 7 personalities, but obviously, like, so that was back.
That sounds like that they perceived that you had different versions of yourself that would come up in the conversation. I mean, normally with DID, you know that they call them alters, where you've got different versions of yourself, but I don't see that here. I think that was probably just. You were so fragmented from the trauma, so fragmented that you were living in different states all the time.
Yeah, and then so that was back in 2012. Managed to get out of that unhealthy relationship in 2018, but I lost my nan and granddad at the same time, and I hit the bottom, like full on bottom. I could not. I'd given up. I begged social services to section me. They turned around and said that I know my history. In what was it, 2008, 2018, 2000, like, what was it? I can't remember. My daughter was 13, and I ended up having to tell her the truth, you know, of who he was and what I was protecting her from, because she weren't able to adopt so much of a normal life. There was parts of her childhood that I had to strip, like she weren't allowed out, you know, she weren't allowed sleepovers, different things like that. And then he started actually following my daughter. and taunting around my house. And he went through social services and said, if I want to keep him out of Oldham, then I have to look after my brother's grave. And I went to saw my brother's grave out luckily the day after his birthday, but he'd been down on my brother's birthday, so he indirectly tried to like control the situations and different things. He'd always told me that he always knew where I was. He told my social worker he knows what's going on in my house. He would tell my social worker about arguments with my ex-partner and stuff like that he knew of. And she went, why don't you just leave her alone? He went, well, if you had a kid but you weren't allowed to see her, like, wouldn't you be interested? And she went, yeah, but I ain't done what you did. And apparently he went like that to her. Like, no bother at all, So that was and then 2018 I lost my nan and granddad, and then I literally hit the bottom. I started going out drinking, started going out partying, thinking everyone's your friend when you're going round, knowing that it was a distraction. Like, my daughter was at my mum's. My mum had got out of that relationship, so my mum was in such a much better place. And I started getting really angry, and my brain did start processing certain things, because I had no other distractions by this point. So it was like, that was all my brain was for. It was finding things, to focus on, because I'd just been used to focusing on things all the time. And then I ended up going to my mum's friends, and I went in on my mum. I said every hurtful comment. I said everything nasty. I threw paperwork at her. Honestly, I was horrible. I was asking questions like, how could you do that? Why did you let that happen? Like, how could you have a bond with my daughter, but you can't have a bond with me? Like, why wasn't I enough? Because even though I've always wanted my mum and my daughter to have a bond, and my mum's been brilliant with my daughter, it did form some kind of jealousy, or why not me? Like, why didn't you do that for me?
Listen, let me just stop you here. I know that you've got a better relationship with your mum now, so I don't want to speak bad about your mum. But what I will say is, that's not you being horrible. That's you using your voice. That's you, all those years where you were stuck and you couldn't use your voice. That's you finally getting it out of your system. You were not being horrible. Even if you were shouting, even if you were screaming, even if you were swearing, that's not you being horrible. It's you releasing a lifetime of pain.
Yeah, I think that's what I did, and then she told me some of her story and that, and then a friend said to me, why don't you start blogging? And I was like, what's that? And he said, just put your life into chapters to break it down. He said, because obviously you could see how distressed I was and how much was on my head and different things like that. And it was mad, because I went home and I thought about it, and I literally wrote the first article within 10 minutes. It's on my blog. It's called A Bit About Me. I was just typing there on my phone, and I sent it in, because I'm not proper, the way I speak is the way I type. I just can't help it. So I sent it in, and he put it on this blog site for me, and people were responding straight away. And then I wrote another one, about school life, how I was 1 minute I'm fitted in with everyone else, next minute I was getting bullied and all. I started self-harming and all these different things, And people could relate to what I was putting on that as well. And then I'd write another one, and literally doing my blog and speaking out saved my life. And from that, I will literally say silence is a false sense of security, because the minute I started speaking out, I had life. I could see forward. I was a better mum. I could process things better. I literally lifted all this out of my body, what I suppressed for that many years, and article after article after article come. Next minute, my blog's global in 30 countries in 1 year. And I'm just like, wow. And all of a sudden, I weren't being told of situations exactly like mine, but all of a sudden I didn't feel alone. I felt like I belonged. I felt like I had purpose, and not after being shut off behind closed doors for all them years, to someone actual reading your stuff and messaging you saying you're an inspiration. It sat deep with me. It still does. Every single message I get, it sits deep with me, because I've gone that long without it. Now when I get it, I don't take it for granted. I'm fully grateful for everything. Anything I get in life, I'm fully grateful for. And then I got approached by Anne Cusack, who wrote my book, but she put my blog in papers and magazines and stuff. So I was getting, next minute, it's just getting it out there, And then my partner, so we was friends for a while, but I always said I would never get in another relationship, because I was too damaged. I couldn't take any more hurt, And I always say, you won't hurt someone you love, you know. So I couldn't put myself back into that vulnerable state, because despite everything I've been through, I am proud that a cruel world hasn't changed me, and I don't want it to, you know. It's kind of, I am stuck in my 7-year-old childhood there. I don't know how, but I kind of believe things can be a fairy tale if you allow it to be. So, and
that's true. It's true.
I ended up being doing the freedom course, and I ended up realising that I was preventing myself from my own happiness, and keeping her as a friend was allowing all this badness to keep me stuck there, you know, compressed. And I ended up getting in a relationship. I moved over to Northern Ireland so I can give my daughter safety. She can go out, you know. She was getting Fs in school. Like, school had wrote her off even though they knew about the situation. Social services had wrote her off, weren't helping her. CAMS weren't helping her. No one was helping her. I fought so many years to try and get help for me and my daughter. In the 15 years that we lived over there while my daughter was born, we didn't receive no help. Like, no help at all. I reached out to Maggie Oliver. Maggie Oliver, absolutely amazing. Like, she helped me. You know,
Wow,
like, she
yeah.
supported me with some things. You know, she helped me share my blog and stuff, and like, she was really supportive. And then that was the first support I got. And then I moved over here, and then my daughter, I had to resit another year in school because, like, she was in her GCSE years, and then she ended up getting C's in school. You know, she knows the truth, and she's come with struggles, you know. It's not been easy, but when I give birth to her, I didn't think, oh yeah, like, I'm going to come across this struggle, oh, this is going to do this is going to do that. I just thought, I'm going to give someone love, unconditional love that I crave myself, you know. And she saved my life. I have to give her something back, and that's all I thought. But obviously, I've come with struggles and complexities and stuff, but we're in such a different place. Like, and it literally has all stemmed from my blog, and now I've created a program to try and help kids protect the safe space and show them awareness on the signs of grooming and different things, healthy boundaries, unhealthy boundaries. That program's fully built. I've got a GoFundMe at the minute to try and get the funds to be able to pilot it and try and roll it out in the whole of the UK to try and help children and be a person for children I wish I had and needed. I built a programme for grieving for the living, but that obviously stems from my abandonment with my foster parents, because I've tried reaching out to them multiple times since, and they've kind of just shut the door on me. I know that might be their way of grieving, but that's left me with a void, lack of self-worth, knowing the only place I ever belonged, even if I went back there, I won't belong there anymore. I don't belong there anymore. The people that love me the most have shut the door on me. Like, that hurts hard, so it's left a massive void inside me, you know. So I've got a programme that I built, like, that's fully completed, 6-week programme, and I've got a 6-week programme for parenting through trauma to try and unblur the lines of parenting, because, like I said, I couldn't back my daughter. I struggled to bond with her in certain aspects because I had all this in my head. Because of my mental health, I weren't able to be the mum that I wish I could have been. And I wish I would have had someone like what I'm going to do for me. You know, that's why I want to do these things for other people. And then I'm going to build a programme around mental health, because there's waiting lists left, right and centre. And I want to try and help people.
Tell me about it. Yeah, I mean, I have to say, you know, the job I do, I work privately, obviously in psychotherapy, and I am, and anyone that knows me knows I'm working till sometimes 4 o'clock in the morning. And I mean, I'm getting up, doing a day's work, and because of all the reports I've got to write and make sure that I've got the programs for each individual client, because they all get an individual pathway with me. I don't bunch people into like, do this, do that because they're paying me, you know. I make sure that for it, and I promise you, that's when I close the laptop, 4 a.m. in the morning, because I have to get it done, because I don't take this job lightly, and I don't take this podcast lightly. And I got to tell you, you are something else. I mean, the story, I've honestly had to stop myself from recording this at times. It's been utterly heartbreaking from beginning to end. I mean, I've got 20 years experience listening to very traumatic stories, and I've heard some, and there are people that bring me to tears. Obviously, when you finish your session, sometimes behind closed doors, you will have a cry. You can't do it in front of people because it's not fair. You're supposed to be holding a safe space, but I've really had to fight back those tears today because I'm heartbroken for you. But I have to say, the way you've rounded that up is just, you are a miracle. I said it throughout the entire episode. You are a miracle. You know when I said earlier about the thoughts are electrical and, the chemical cascade in cellular software, what you said earlier about, you've sort of kept that 7-year-old child. I often refer to my inner child. I've got a perfect picture of her. She wears red wellies. She's got a little blue dress on. I used to love being in the garden, making mud pies, and I was obsessed with caterpillars and butterflies, and just, because that was my escapism. And I'm sure that most kids have got somewhere they escape to in their head. And she's still with me very, very, very strongly. I'm a dreamer to my detriment sometimes. And I hear you when you say, like, you got to dream in something, because every time you fire that thought of dreaming, of seeing, oh my God, this blog's doing so well, people like it. Every time you fire that thought, it's a different chemical cascade. It's a good, positive chemical cascade. It starts to rebuild the cellular software inside your body, which starts to change your identity, which starts to change the behavior, which starts to change the outcome. And that's exactly what you did. You literally started to fire different thoughts, different electrical thoughts, different chemicals, different cellular software. You've changed your entire identity. You are now somebody that has gone from the most horrific childhood to somebody that is supporting others and being the person that you needed. And I am amazed and just so in love with the person that you are. You are such an incredible, wonderful, beautiful human being. And everything was against you, and yet you still made it. You've still made it. You're incredible, Stace. You are incredible. There is very few people like you in this world. Very few. You are an incredible, wonderful. And from one person to another that's had, the parental, both my mum and dad, when that's destroyed, I mean, yours is many more layers on top, but when that's destroyed, when you haven't got a safe parental background, you're on your own, and you feel very much on your own. And of course, where there's violence and where there's sexual abuse and where there's emotional abuse, and when you're told you're the problem, and when the people around you aren't keeping you safe, it's a different type of life. But what I see in you, and what I've seen in so many others, like Sam, like Nina Olk, who's been on the episode, like many other, Jaslyn, who's also on this episode, and many of my clients that I can't mention, and you and Justin Rollins and all these people that have had really, really, really horrendous childhoods, they've all turned out to be magical, wonderful, beautiful miracles. And there's something about this. This is why everyone needs to hear this story, because if you are that person now that's keeping a secret, that's locking away all your trauma, look to people like Stace that are, and all the others that I've mentioned there, that are literally going out there, changing other people's lives with a full heart. And I know there will still be very dark days, and I know there will still be complexities for you and your daughter. And I know that the path ahead is bumpy. And to be honest, with complex PTSD, you could have a few months, a few years even, when you're doing really well. And then it can be the smallest of things. I always say it's like the straw that breaks the camel's back, and you will have those bad days, and you will have those bad weeks. And everybody will see the book, the blog, the programs, and they'll go, she's all right. Always check on the people that look the strongest, because sometimes we're not all right, are we? Sometimes we're not doing okay.
Nah, mental health's real, and I get visuals, me as well. So, like, sometimes, like, I can actually see him in my house, and I have to walk through the ghost of him, and, like, the strength, like, I could feel absolutely fine, and then that would just happen, and I just feel completely relaxed,
I get you. I get that as well. It's not so much, it's more like I'm transported back. But it's very visual for me. I said earlier, didn't I? I'm a very visual person, but I understand that. You could be just washing up. You could be doing just any normal thing, and all of a sudden you're transported.
Yeah.
It's a thing, and it's really hard because you never escape it fully.
No, that's it.
But
sorry.
Look at you though. Honestly, look at how you've managed to now. And the other thing is, and I've written a book, you've written a book, and I use Instagram really as my blog. I suppose I'm going to be moving over to Substack as well, because I hear that's the place to be. The kids tell me that's the place to be. So, but I think the power of the voice and the power of the written word is real, isn't it? I mean, honestly, you're testament to that. Using your voice, even if you can't verbalize it, because some people don't like the sound of their own voices, or they're scared to put out a video, or they're scared to do podcasts. But actually, places like Substack and other blog sites, and writing a book or keeping a journal. I encourage my next book, which is due out soon, is called Letters to Myself, because actually writing to yourself, even if no one else ever sees it, is using your mind. It's using your creativity. It's using the power of the word. So just as a kind of closing part, because obviously you have written the book, My Girl, and you know we know from your story it's going to be, anyone that's read it will already know, but those that haven't, powerful moving book. Tell me about how much that means to you now that you've done all of these things. I know you've said that it saved your life, but I mean, it has changed your life.
Yeah, no, it has. It has completely changed my life, because of like all them years that I just sat silent. I didn't realise I was protecting other people by doing that. I thought I was keeping myself safe by not speaking out, but really I was just keeping it quiet for them, really, because they were the only ones that benefited from me keeping quiet. You know, I was suppressing and living it. So to actually get my everything in a book and actually get my story heard and have the support that I've had since since it's come out, like I'm just so grateful, and it just fires me up to like, right, I can do more. Like, it gives me the belief in myself that I've never had. You know, I still struggle with confidence, still struggle with self-worth, like, and different things. So when someone messages me or something like that, it kind of gives me validation. Like, I am like a good person, you know, and I can do good things and achieve good things. So, like, yeah, it is. I am proud of myself for obviously doing my book and then doing the programs and different things. And I built a website now, and then I've got my blog site. Like, if someone would have told me before I wrote my blog that I'd have all that, I'd be like, no, you're having a laugh. You know, I've even passed my driving license. I've got my first job, you know, like, so I'm literally trying to hit milestone after milestone, and I just want to keep thriving. But the bad days, obviously, then it tells me like, no, this, like, you're going to end yourself, like, you're not going to like succeed at different things. But then I have to like override it and just like keep training and strengthening the positive side of my brain to be able to say, no, actually, you're wrong. Like, I can do this because I've done this, and this, and because I've got living proof of things that I've achieved now. It is easier to tell myself that I can do things, where before I didn't have nothing, so there was nothing to go off, you know.
And that's why you've got to make that first step. Like your friend said, write that first blog. You know, even if you can't write, draw that first picture, paint that first canvas, take that first step into the gym. Whatever the first step is for you as an individual, take that first step. I mean, right, I must ask this question, because if I don't, I think the listeners will be really annoyed with me. Where is your dad now, and what's the contact that he has with you? Or
he doesn't. So he got released from prison in 2014 and lived in Manchester. However, my book, no, it wasn't. It was my blog, got shared in a newspaper, and the police helped him move from Manchester back to Essex. So I believe he's located in Essex. He can be named as well. He's named in the book. So his name's...
Can you say his name on here?
Yeah, so his name's Nigel Taylor, but he changed it when he was sentenced to Marcus Halliwell. Just obviously the loophole in the system.
What a scumbag. What a scumbag. You know what a piece of shit you are when you change your name. So you can protect yourself. Really? You want to protect yourself while you go around battering children and women and little girls at that? Like, what a pathetic, tiny little man he really is. What a pathetic... When they change their names... Well, because you're a bit scared that you might get beaten up and do to others what has been done to you. They're just pathetic, tiny little men. They're disgusting. And every time I don't know why it gets to me, but every time I hear that they've changed their names, I just think, you absolute tiny little speck of shit, because that's what they are. They are absolutely disgraceful. And I'm disgusted. I'm disgusted that they're allowed to change their name. Why are we protecting these people?
Honestly,
why are we helping them?
It's madness, because when he got out in 2014, I was in a meeting at my daughter's primary school, and I was told that I expect a letter through my post because he can apply to access to my daughter, Katie. And I said, what do you mean? And the social service woman that was there, I was like, the teacher was there, the social services woman was there, and she turned around and said, because you're not known to Manchester Social Services, and that's where he'll run through, because that's where he's been released to, or that's where he's moved to after release, and not Oldham Social Services and Essex Social Services, who know your case, he will be granted access. Work that one out. I thought all the services were just our service. Where's the phone calls? Where's the communication within the service? Luckily, he never applied for access to KD. He was never interested in KD, but he was just interested in me and hurting me, which obviously then I thought he was going to use my daughter to get to me, you know. But he could have, and I was told he would be granted access for him to see her.
This reminds me of Sammy Woodhouse. I think she had a similar situation, didn't she, with him being able to get access to her race, being able to get access to her child. I mean, again, when nobody gave a shit about the child that was clearly being destroyed and didn't protect you, they are protecting him more by letting him change his name, moving him from Manchester to wherever the fuck he is, letting him just get access to more people so he can abuse them and hurt them. How are we living in 2026 where that's still a possibility?
I don't know. Sorry, go on.
No, you go on.
Do you know what annoys me as well is the fact that when they come out of prison, they have a package there for them, so they get help. They have support workers. They've got the shop hall. They have the rehabilitation the courses. They have this course. They have that course. They have housing support. I got him sentenced, walked home, dealt with mental health for the last 18 years that my daughter's been born, begged for help left, right and centre. Where's my support package?
Nothing.
Where's everyone else's support package? Nothing. Waiting list. I've had to watch people and observe people for the last 15 years just to adopt normality into my brain, to retrain my brain myself and do the work.
Yeah, that's exactly what I had to do. That's what I had to do. I had to literally, I've said this I had to observe what others were doing because I didn't have normality.
No.
So I was like, well, how have they done that? And you literally have to mimic other people because you've got no sense of self.
No.
You've got no sense of self. You've got no identity because everything's been taken away. So the only way to learn how to be human is to watch other people that are being human. There's no help for us. It was the same for me. No help. But my dad can walk straight out of prison and back into the house, no problem, because poor him. Same with your dad, gets all the support, all the help. And these other people, by the way, that are doing this, all these pedophiles, all these disgusting human beings, and they get all the support, all the help. There's nothing for the child that's abused. And we live in...
Sorry, go on.
No, go on. No, you go.
And once they've done the time in prison and they come out, the police and everyone else, they don't like you actually speaking about the case because they've done their sentence. But
that's right.
What about my mental health after 18 years? I'm still living the life sentence. My daughter's living the life sentence.
Do you know, it's funny you should say that because a couple of magazines a little while ago got in touch with me. They wanted to do articles on the story. And weirdly enough, even though my dad was in prison and there should be records of this because it was such a long time ago, I can't remember. They couldn't find we had to go through Mosifo, the courts. They could find a court reference number. They could trace him back to Little Hay Prison in Cambridgeshire, but they couldn't find the actual court sentencing, the actual criminal sentencing. So because since then there'd been, I believe, I might be slightly off here, but there'd been like 15 different systems, what's the word I'm looking for? Digital systems. And I believe because it was such a long time ago and it was my case that it was done in writing. So the courts in Northampton, which is where I'm from, they even had to go back through the archives of the written court notes. They still couldn't find enough evidence. But this is a man that's gone to prison. And because there was bits missing, there's information missing somewhere, I wasn't allowed to use my voice. So that's why I just started a podcast, because I realised that there are people out there that don't have a voice because you won't get covered in the mainstream media unless they can tick all the boxes. So I wrote my own book so I could have my own voice. I started a podcast so other people could have their own voice, and people that have committed crimes, not pedophiles obviously, but people that have committed crimes that have been wrongly convicted and all those things where they're not allowed a voice. And I thought, this is what the new mind needs to be about. Yes, I'm a psychotherapist, but also I know day in, day out, dealing with people's stories, that we walk past people in the street every day. People will walk past you in the street or in the supermarket. They won't have a clue about who you are and what your life's about. And yet we need to know that, you know, you could walk past a stranger, be nice to them, because you don't know what they're carrying on their shoulders. You don't know what they've gone through, and you don't know that they haven't got a voice. So this is what this podcast is all about, really. It's about being a voice for those that can't yet speak, and showing that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and discussing these things, bringing it to the attention. I mean, I know loads of people do now, because social media is full of this kind of conversation about justice and everything else. But we have to bring that to the attention in this episode, that justice hasn't been done. He did 3.5 years in prison. That's not fucking justice for you. And by the way, the other people that are walking around that have let you down as well, you haven't had justice. You've created justice for yourself and for your daughter. You have done this. You created this life for yourself, you on your own, because you're a fucking miracle. And I'm so proud of who you were then and who you are now. Like, you amaze me. And I just think you're incredible. I really, really do. I think you're brilliant, and I think you're beautiful, and I think you're tremendous, and I think we need more of you. And I'm so, so, so grateful that you've done this episode with me. Like, you are a brave, beautiful, shining light in this world. And I am genuinely amazed by who you are as a person. And I can only imagine that your daughter's going to be just the same.
Yeah.
And thank God. Just thank God you made it. Thank God you made it, because it didn't look like you were going to make it for a while.
No, I didn't. But there was times where I didn't think I was going to make it, you know. But I just say to myself, like, I just really want to be a person for others that I didn't have. Like, I don't want anyone sat at home feeling that alone and that isolated and alienated and judged by society, because that is one lonely place to be in. No, I just can't have anyone feeling like that.
No, I know. I get it. I do. You're driven by love, despite the fact that no one showed you how to love. That's all that you are. That's all you represent. And anyone listening to this or watching this can see that. You are just love. You are pure love. That's what you are. And, you know, look, we're going to have to wrap this up. So I could literally talk to you for days, because you're so inspiring and so brilliant and so wonderful. But we do need to make sure people know where they can follow you, where they can find your programs, your book, your blog. So go through that list now, and we'll include it in all the links as well.
So my Instagram is just Stace Dawn, but I've got a Facebook page, which is The Life of Stace Dawn. TikTok, I'm The Life of Stace Dawn. I've got my blog's The Life of Stace Dawn at WordPress. Then I've got www.thelifeofstacedawn.org.uk. On there is my blog, my book, my GoFundMe account, and information around all the programs that I've created. And yeah, that's got my email address on it if anyone wanted to personally email me or anything.
You are an angel. I will stop the recording in a minute and we'll have a quick chat afterwards, but you are an angel. Is there anything that you want to say before we finish today's episodes to anyone that may have gone through anything similar to you? Is there anything that you want to say or offer as words of advice?
Just know that silence is a false sense of security, and like, it is okay, because once you use your voice, it's the only thing that they can't take back from you, you know, and like, you can get through it, you know.
Bless your heart. Thank you, Stace. I know everybody that's listened to this will love you as much as I do. And I know we're going to see more of you, and I know you're going to make big moves in this world.
Good try.
Thank you for doing the episode. No, you are. You're doing it already. You're already doing it. So thank you so much for being on this episode today of The New Mind.